Okay, let's start. Let's call it to order. City Clerk.
Councilmember Agency Director Mann.
Present.
Marcus.
Here.
Cilio. Vice Mayor, Vice Chairman Smith.
Here.
Mayor Chairman Paris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The invocation this evening is going to be by Larry Chappell of Lancaster Baptist Church.
Let's pray together. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love for us, Lord, for your goodness to us and your mercy that you extend to us on a daily basis. Lord, we come to you tonight and we thank you for the Christian foundation upon which our nation was founded, from those who recognized their need for you. And God, I pray that we would recognize that same need tonight, that need for wisdom in every decision that's made tonight. Lord, I pray that it would bring honor to your name. Lord, I think of our nation tonight. God, I pray that you would continue to bless our nation. We know that your word says that righteousness exalts a nation. And God, I pray that we would continue to find grace and favor in your eyes, Lord. Lord, we think of our elected leaders. I pray that you would continue to be with them, guide them, and as they lead and make many important decisions. Lord, I think of our leaders here locally. I pray that you would give them your wisdom with each decision that they make tonight. Lord, I pray that you would continue to bless our city. And God, we think tonight especially of those who are fighting fires in nearby cities. God, I pray that you would give them safety, Lord, as they maneuver around difficult terrain. And God, I pray that you would just be with those, especially the family members of those who lost their loved ones this past week. I pray that you just give them your grace. Lord, be with this meeting once again, and we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pastor Chappell, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance also? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Our student speaker is Armando Carlos from Parkview Middle School. Come on up, Armando. Use the mic, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Armando, and today my subject is Labor Day. All of us know about Labor Day. It is the last holiday of the summer, the last long weekend. In some places, it signals the beginning of the new school year. But there is much more to Labor Day. In 1894, Congress ruled that the first Monday in September would be set aside to honor the workers of America. This declaration followed a long period of struggle for countless workers who had experienced decades of mistreatment. There was a rapid growth in the number of factories in the late 1800s as the Industrial Revolution took hold. The average worker worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to make a basic living. Child labor was common. Wealthy industrialists routinely took advantage of their workers in their factories. They repeated efforts to help their workers in their lot through organizing into unions which would give them some bargaining power. As we may remember from our history classes, there was fierce opposition to the efforts to help their workers unionize, which are not only from the rich manufacturers, but often from government law enforcement officers. Slowly and painfully, workers gained more and more rights and were able to make improvements in their working conditions. Today we understand that this wonderful standard of living which we enjoy is largely the result of the great achievements of a great army of hard-working Americans. So as we enjoy backyard barbecues or celebrate in some other way, let us take a moment to reflect and appreciate generations of often struggling workers who did so much to make our good lives possible. Thank you.
Okay, Adam Sundberg from Lancaster High School is our Athlete of the Month. Adam, how are you? Good. hate it when they're taller than I am. This is Adam Sundberg. Adam is from Lancaster High School. He's on the Lancaster High School baseball team. Adam started at first base at Lancaster High School for the past 3 seasons, leading the 2009 team to its first appearance in the CIF semifinals. He played the entire 209 season without committing an error. Adam was named first team All-Golden League in both his junior and senior seasons. He was also named the first team All-Valley and All-CIF teams. Adam led the team in many categories, posting a .446 batting average. Is that good?
It's all right.
That's real good. Okay. With 37 runs batted in during the season and a .500 average during the playoffs. Lancaster High School, that means you get on half the time. Great. Lancaster High School voted Adam captain of the baseball team, the baseball offensive player of the year, the baseball most valuable player, the baseball scholar athlete of the year, and the senior class scholarship athlete of the year, scholar athlete of the year. Adam also played varsity soccer, club baseball, club soccer, and was selected as a member of the junior Olympic baseball team. Wow. Adam was valedictorian at Lancaster High, finishing with a 4.4 GPA. Yeah, I did that. No. He was a member of the National Honor Society, the California Scholarship Federation, was an officer at Boise State. Adam is a church acolyte at Grace Lutheran Church and has volunteered for the Run Against Violence, the American Cancer Society Relay for Life at Grace Resource Center and at the Antelope Valley Hospital. Adam is currently, now this is the good part, this is a stellar achievement. This is truly magnificent. He is enrolled at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And he is living in my dorm and is getting a degree in computer engineering. Wow, 4.4, you know that. For his outstanding accomplishments in sports, academics, service to the community, I would like to present Adam Sundberg with the Mayor's Athlete of the Month Award. And I noticed that it's a little messed up, so if you could bring that back to us, and we'll get you a new one, okay? And we're also going to give you a $1,500 Mayor Scholarship on top of this. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh, it's Seabark for the money, okay? Okay. Okay, all speaker cards must be filled out and submitted prior to the agenda item being called. The same rule applies if you wish to speak on non-agendized items at the end of the meeting. Following this process will allow us to conduct a timely and orderly meeting. Thank you. And we have the new PELCA rule. And the PELCA rule is that you get 3 minutes unless you ask us a question, in which case we will then respond to the question. And at the end of the 3 minutes, if we have any comments, that's when we'll make them. So everybody gets their full 3 minutes. And so everybody in this room has now been PELCArized. That's a joke. Any items to be removed from the redevelopment consent calendar?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move we accept the agency consent calendar.
Second.
Let's vote. It's unanimous, and let the record reflect that Councilman Cilio is now in attendance and got here actually right after we took the roll. Any items on the consent calendar to be pulled?
No, sir.
Okay.
Move to adopt the consent calendar as currently comprised.
I'll second that.
It's unanimous. Before we go into the joint public hearing, David Paul has requested that he be allowed to speak out of order, and in light of his faithful service at every single council meeting, the floor is yours. And he's friends with the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, good evening. I requested to speak early tonight because tonight is my honor to begin the Sheriff's Academy for civilians at the station. That'll run about 8 weeks and be on Tuesday nights, so I probably can't stick around every time for the public comments. So that's why I've come tonight. I want to share with you something that's going on in my life. I've been very introspective lately. I'm finishing up a book. I've been working on a book for the last year that deals with failure, my own personal failure. Basically 50 years worth of that failure, but the first book is comprised of only the first 20 years. I need 3 full books to account for all my failures in life. But tonight I was thinking about one of them that is really a success in the long run because we learn the most from our mistakes. Captain Anderson at the National Night Out was showing my boys his stars of service on his sleeve. He has 6 of them to signify 30 years of service, 5 for 25 years. About 25 years ago, the sheriff of Menominee County, Michigan, Robert Evans, walked me to the back door of the jail over my objections and told me to get out. As he slammed the door in my face, he told me, "Sue me." Back up a year, I went to a candidates forum, much like I've participated in, and I saw the gentleman on the stage that were running for mayor or for sheriff, and I said to myself, I would only work for one of these gentlemen. I spoke to him at the end of the meeting. I showed him my certificates from the Illinois Department of Corrections Training Academy. I showed him my dog training certificates in different awards I'd won with dogs, and I showed him my black belt degrees in Taekwondo. And he was running on a platform to clean up his jail. So I told him, I'm your man. He hired me immediately, put me into his jail, and I like our philosophy, lead, follow, get out of the way. I didn't know so much about social skills in those days. I just wanted to get the job done. First thing I did after checking the perimeter of the jail was go into the kitchen and take 28 butcher knives out of the drawers that the inmates had access to. There was this reluctance to bring professionalism to the jail, and about midstream, we got the famous murderer. This young man had shot his wife. He beat her up, vowed in jail to go back and kill her. He was released, and he went out and he blew her in half with 30-06. So now we have a famous murderer in our jail, and he's from the richest family in town. He has the best lawyer in town, and I'm going to request at the end of this that we turn off that because I'll just be one more minute over my time. This is a great story. I locked the guy up. You know, you do cell checks. You make sure the doors are locked. You check for jams in the thing. You do all the things to keep the guy in. He had committed a brutal murder, and I had no sympathy for him. As a matter of fact, I told him the truth. I was the only person in that jail that had ever worked in a prison. And he would ask me, what's it like in prison? And I tell him, oh, man, you know, it's not going to be good for you. So,
Mr. Paul,
yes,
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, you know what? I tell you what. This is a great story, and next time I'll finish it. How's that for you?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, because there's a happy ending.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing on item number 1 and hear from Director Vern Lawson. Frank public hearing. What did I say? Oh, okay. Okay.
Mayor and Council, we have an exciting deal tonight for you. This is an agreement that will get us a shopping center out on the west side and actually is a partnership with Antelope Valley Community College. This particular project, the developer is Marinita, and it's been in process for quite a while. The site is the southwest corner of 30th Street West and Avenue K, and we were approached by the college probably 3 or 4 years ago to work with them cooperatively to develop some college-compatible retail adjacent to the college. The site's about 4.5 acres. It will accommodate 35,000 square feet of retail. And so we began a process that included a zone change, a general plan amendment, an environmental impact was finished. And before you tonight is an agreement with the developer, a DDA, to cause the development of that site. This is the site plan that's been proposed out there. This is our continuing quest to position Lancaster to be ready when the inevitable retail upturn takes place. I wouldn't kid anybody. We just got back from the International Conference of Shopping Centers the other day, and retail is a bit down in the United States. No change in the city of Lancaster, so I wouldn't think that this will be developed overnight, but they have a couple-year period to go ahead and do this. We appreciate the cooperation of the college. We think it's something that will be very positive. You've already approved the zone change general plan amendment actually back in 2007. So our recommendation is that you approve this agreement. I have representatives of the developer here, Mr. Larry Powell and David Garrison, who are with Marinita. We also have our college president, Dr. Jackie Fisher, back if you have any questions about them. But with that, we would recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Do they know it's across the street from a proposed liquor store? I mean, until somebody comes and asks us to change it, it's across the street from a liquor
Yes,
store.
I think they're quite aware of all the conditions that exist out there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one speaker card, Dave Garrison and Larry Powell. So I guess it's two speaker cards, but we're saving paper. Oh, I see. Do you know it's across the street from a okay. I mean, not that anybody should come and change it. Maybe they might. Okay. Any comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 23-09 and resolution number 09-84.
I'll second that.
Let's vote. Thank you. Okay, we continued from the last council meeting, item number CPH1, and we'll hear from Brian Ludicky.
Mayor Paris, members of the City Council, as you indicated, this was an appeal of a Planning Commission denial of a conditional use permit request at the northwest corner of 17th Street West and Avenue J. It was on your last agenda and was continued over to tonight's meeting. At that time, staff gave a basic rundown on the history of this particular site and this request. Originally, back in 2008, this applicant had filed a request for the development of a shopping or a car wash and a coffee house on this site. And this original request, oops, gosh, where did it go? Put the right one in. The original request is there another one up there? Yeah, that one.
You know, in the next election, I'm going to put as part of the platform that we will go to Apple's.
The original request that was heard by the Planning Commission back in 2008 was the site plan that you see before you. It's unfortunately not in a state of color, so it's a little bit hard to see. But that plan showed
Nothing of understand.
a coffee house right in this area of approximately 988 square feet. It described a car wash building in this area and an area for vacuuming in this location. And the proposal was that you would have vehicles enter at a driveway over here, go through this vacuuming area, come out through this tunnel and over to a drying area in this location. The coffee house over in this area was served by a parking area over here and a second driveway here that would allow traffic to move in and out of here without interfering with this drawing location. The Planning Commission, upon looking at that, felt that there were a number of issues that needed to be considered. Traffic circulation, they were concerned about also the noise effect of this project and whether or not the site was large enough to accommodate this particular use. The applicant, upon doing the studies, came back to the Planning Commission in April with this particular request, consisting now of basically a car wash facility, a vacuum area where you would have a single driveway, entrance into this location, circulation here over to parking and drying area, and a detail shop that was proposed in place of the coffee house because of the concerns raised about that component of the use. The Planning Commission, upon the review of this, as well as the traffic study and noise analysis, which demonstrated from staff's perspective that there would not be a significant adverse effect on the area, nonetheless denied this based, I think, on concerns about compatibility of the use with the surrounding area. The applicant subsequently appealed that. It has taken, obviously, some amount of time to get in front of you, but is in front of you now. As we indicated to you, from staff's perspective, we had recommended approval on actually both of these requests. We feel that the traffic analysis as well as the noise analysis that was done further bolstered that by an indication that there was not going to be a significant adverse effect. You have in front of you a letter which was prepared by an attorney's office indicating some concern over whether or not the city could in fact consider this to be infill development, and whether or not the fact that the city has modified the general plan land use designation since this case was originally noticed would have any effect on the proceedings. First of all, from a CEQA standpoint, we do feel that this site meets the criteria included in the California Environmental Quality Act for an infill development project. The site is less than 5 acres. It is only 0.7, in fact, in size. We have the studies in hand that demonstrate there are not going to be significant effects in terms of noise and traffic. And we also have utilities and other systems and services within the area that are adequate to serve the property. The other definition that's included as part of that infill definition in CEQA is that the site has to be substantially surrounded by urban uses. This is certainly the case on this site. You have development on the west, on the north, on the east, and on the south. The other issue in regards to whether or not the project could be approved under a conditional use permit, given the change in the general plan land use designation on the site from C to office professional. In discussion with the city attorney's office, and the deputy city attorney could add to this if you have additional questions on it, the finding that is required in terms of approving a conditional use permit is that it has to be substantially in conformance with the city's general plan. The city has not changed the zoning designation on the property at this point. The car wash facility is the one that actually triggers the CUP request. It does not interfere from our standpoint with the city's policies in terms of the general plan for that area. I think there's been some supposition that because there was a desire expressed to do medical office in that area, that if this were to be denied and the zoning changed ultimately to office professional, that would guarantee an office development on the project site. It doesn't. Office professional actually allows not only offices but some range of commercial uses, including the coffee house, which is shown. That would be a permitted use under the office professional designation. We don't believe that there's really a question, given the fact that this applicant filed this request when the site was zoned as C. It is still zoned as C, and under a general plan land use designation of C, that they should be denied simply on the basis that the city changed the general plan about a year and a half after the filing of the case. it is fair to indicate, I think, that they should have at least their opportunity to present their case. If you are going to look at denial of this from staff standpoint, it really needs to be based on whether or not the size and the shape of the property is adequate to accommodate the use that is proposed, not simply because there has been a change in the general plan land use designation as of July the 14th. I think it's also important to note that at the time the Planning Commission took its action on this, they had not formally, to my recollection, made a recommendation on the general plan adoption to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As you can see from the staff report and the recommendations, it is a rather complicated case for a relatively small site. You have before you the option to uphold the Planning Commission's denial. You could adopt a resolution overturning the Planning Commission's denial and approve the original use that was proposed for the site. The applicant, I believe, did indicate to you last time that that would be their preference. You also have the option of overturning the Planning Commission's decision and approving the use or the layout as shown here, which was the most recent case presented to the Planning Commission by the applicant. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have a couple questions. Mr. Ludicky, on the traffic and the noise study, is that a standard thing? That I mean, I know the attorney looked at there and thought that there should be a full-blown EIR, but I mean, wasn't this above and beyond what a normal developer for this size lot on an infill would do?
It's rather rare to have a project of this size complete a traffic study or a noise analysis. It's not unheard of, but it is rather rare. Generally, when projects come in, staff through the city's traffic division take a look at whether or not the proposed use as well as the site that it's proposed on are going to have the potential to cause some kind of a traffic impact. They use that as the criteria for determining whether or not they need to do it, an applicant needs to do a traffic study. In this particular case, the initial thought from city staff was no, that it didn't need to be done. However, in response to the concerns raised by the Planning Commission, the applicant did in fact go back and do one. Staff did review that to ensure that from our standpoint it was adequate in its scope and its analysis.
Okay. One question for Mr. Adams also. I know that by your understanding of the zoning and the changing of the general plan, I know that we just went through, when we were going through the general plan and some other projects, that we had gotten some stuff from Mr. McEwen on case law about land use, and that once the person has their application in and going through the process of the CUP, that they're actually under the onus of the designation at the time that they're going in front, and that continues up to this point too. Is that correct?
Yeah, and my understanding of the particular memorandum that you're speaking of, I think it dealt with a different situation. It was different circumstances.
Even more of a land use change. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. The more the land is downzoned, the more it interferes with the investment-backed expectations of the landowner, the more that you're going to have potentially a regulatory taking issue. I didn't see that as a particular issue. I didn't research that particularly in the context of this application because I just didn't see it as being the same as the previous case that you were mentioning where Mr. McEwen prepared the memorandum.
Yeah, I know he prepared the land around the townhome property, but I think we were very specific on being told that the townhomes that were in the process of going through were, maybe Mr. Ludicky can elaborate on that because I know I've talked to him too about that the other ones had, the downzoning and the possibility of a taking. But I don't think it in this category it's when they, maybe you can elaborate, that once they get in the pipeline under one general plan, then when you adopt it, it doesn't negate everything that they've done up to that point. They're still under that.
I think probably even more on point to that, the conditional use permit process is tied specifically to zoning. It's tied to the zoning regulations. The zoning on the property is still commercial. And I think as a result of that, that is the basis on which you have to analyze the conditional use permit application. And as I said, there are specific findings related to size, shape, effect on adjacent properties that are appropriate to consider as part of a use permit application.
I'm just trying to clarify, because the attorneys that wrote the letter were very much talking about the zoning change in the general plan, so that's it for staff. Thanks.
Mr. Ludicky, I have a few questions.
Sure.
What was the length of time from the time this project was submitted to the planning, submitted to your department until now?
I don't have the exact date of submittal. The applicant may have it, but I believe it was probably submitted early in 2008.
So what's the time frame, a year and a half?
Approximately.
Why does it take so long?
I think first of all, it's fair to indicate that the case would have was originally from staff's perspective ready to go in May of 2008. We weren't able, because there was no planning commission meeting, to hold it. It was sent to the next available meeting in June. When the applicant was advised to go back and reanalyze certain portions of this, staff did go back and try to work with them in terms of the studies and making sure that it got the information out that the Planning Commission was interested in seeing. It took us a while to get that done and to work out a revised plan. That was ready essentially, I think, in about late February or March. Given the noticing requirements that we needed to do through the process, we scheduled it for the April 20th meeting, and that's when they heard it.
So we have a year. Was that because of the city, or was that because of the applicant?
You know, I would say that probably because it went through a number of different reviews, you could probably point to both sides as having some effect on that.
So what do we do to speed it up? I mean, it just seems to me that, let's assume that we do approve it. The city was denied a tax-generating business for a year, unnecessarily. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to approve this particular one, but I just don't understand why it takes so long. And what I would like to hear from you is a plan to make it not take so long. I mean, do we have a procedure as to, say the Planning Commission sends it back, when they're able to meet with you? How many weeks, how many days? I mean, when are we available to them?
In many cases, the staff tries to work very closely with the applicant on it. I'm not going to say that we necessarily watched this one as closely as we should have, because to some degree we left it to the applicant as to whether they in fact even wanted to come back with the information and so forth. I think there was some feeling on their part, although they can speak to this, that they were concerned about whether it was worth their while to do it, given what the feeling was from the commission meeting. But ultimately, yes, they did provide the information. We went through reviews on it, both our traffic division as well as our planning staff, and probably took longer than it should have taken. I think the key here is that for projects of this type, we need to have a better tracking system as far as making sure that information is coming in, getting disseminated internally, and getting back to the applicant in a timely manner.
So what are we going to do to effectuate that?
May I answer that, Mayor Paris? We've given by the end of this year to have a tracking system in place to help with that. I would be remiss in not pointing out, too, that the applicant did request a extension of the appeal from, I think it was May, until this period as well. But by the end of the year, we plan on having a tracking system in place that will help with what you're talking about.
Is that tracking system going to be open to the public to review?
Still to be determined. It'll certainly be open to all the stakeholders in it, such as the developer and such. I can't answer that right now, because I just don't know.
Okay. All right. I mean, it just occurs to me that if the applicant knows that it's got lost in the system, then they're able to wake us up. But if they don't know that it's got lost, it just languishes. And so whatever we're designing, I'm hoping that it will correct that problem. Okay? All right. When you say that it has no adverse impact on the noise issue, specifically, what does that mean? I mean, that seems to me to be a quantitative analysis that somebody ought to be able to give me the numbers.
The analysis that was done for the car wash indicated that the decibel level with the car wash in place and with the screening and the enclosing of equipment within the concrete rooms would be loudest, and I can kind of show this to you. The loudest location is right here at the tunnel opening, but they indicated that the decibel level there would be at 70 decibels. That's a combination of the noise that comes out of the tunnel as well as the traffic noise already existing on Avenue J, and the point of that is right in this location. Under the city's general plan, office areas have a 70 decibel criteria, and that if something is at 70 decibels or less, it's considered as being consistent with that area.
What's the ambient noise now?
From the Avenue J traffic.
Could we look at the overhead
oh, sure.
projection?
The loudest, and this probably is no surprise, the greatest impact of noise is right in this location. And that's because of the noise that comes off of Avenue J. This particular project, as I said, if you look at the second plan that was provided, would have somewhat of a noise generation right in here, right at 70 decibels when combined with this traffic that comes here. The rest of the site is going to be well down in the 60s, and noise levels now probably range within that area.
Well, wait a minute, that doesn't really answer the question. Probably. I mean, did somebody go out there with the decibel meter?
Yes.
And what's the ambient noise? So what is the number?
It's in the mid-60s.
I'm sorry?
It's in the mid-60s as far as decibels.
So it's actually going to be louder?
There will be, as I said, down in this area, an increase in the noise level because of a combination of the traffic noise and what comes out of the tunnel.
The building to the left, what is that?
This is a medical office building.
And the building behind it?
This one here?
No.
This one? I believe that's a residence.
Any change in the noise to the residents?
It will not exceed the 65 decibel reading.
Is that a change from the current status?
You will have a slight increase, but not significant, which, by the way, CEQA defines as a 3 decibel change or greater.
That's significant.
3 decibels or greater is significant. Okay. That is not going to be the case here.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Paris, may I make a statement? Unfortunately, we didn't get an opportunity maybe to take everybody over to the Chevron that's on the corner of Valley Central Way and Lancaster, but Hernando Marroquin, which is a McDonald's franchisee, actually has all of his corporate headquarters over the top of the car wash. And I've been in there several times, and again, I think that technology, as it continues to move forward, is getting so superb with what we visualize, what used to be the old, I think maybe 15, 20 years ago. So,
thank you. Okay, I think that's all I have. Mr. Bose, I appreciate you coming. Mr. Bose is the chairman of the Planning Commission, and I'd like to hear what the Planning Commission's thoughts were on this before we go to the public speaker cards. And I really do appreciate you coming. I mean, you put an enormous amount of time into this job, and last I heard, they don't pay you. So
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's like being on jury duty, isn't it?
Pardon me?
It's like being on jury duty, isn't it?
You know,
jurors get paid for.
I didn't bring a book. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Actually, this item was considered by the members of the Planning Commission 4 times. Those of you who served on a Planning Commission would recall that staff meets with the members of the Planning Commission a week prior to the regular public session. Those sessions are public. However, we rarely have anyone in attendance. There's no deliberation in those meetings. However, we interact with staff to a great degree typically. And so on June 9th, the Planning Commission had a study session on this matter. A number of issues were raised by the members, and if you don't mind, I'm reading from notes. One of the principal concerns was the traffic signal installation requirements on the intersection of 17th and J, and on-site circulation. This is based on the first plan, which had the, if somebody wants to put it up, which had the coffee house as well as the car wash, and the 2 points of ingress and egress, which were of a concern. Is there a pointer on that? Okay. Thanks. The initial plan of the coffee house here, as you've heard from Mr. Ludicky, and it had 2 ingress and egress points, which the Commission was concerned about considering the small size of the site, as well as how employee parking would be provided for the equipment operation noise and the compatibility with the neighboring office professional uses. On June 16th, the Commission, as Mr. Ludicky pointed out, and I won't belabor it, held the public hearing. We had about 45 minutes of testimony. We heard from the applicant. We received a couple of protest letters, one from Nancy Schmidt as well as one from an attorney representing Dr. Vizrani. We also heard from the applicant as well as his representatives. And we also heard from 4 or 5 other speakers. During that process with the applicant and the opposition presentations, the Commission members asked a number of questions related to the traffic signal requirements, noise impacts to the neighboring medical facilities, the on-site circulation, pedestrian safety, adequate parking, circulation related to the drying area, the coffee shop impacts as it related to the 5 inside and 3 outside proposed table seating, and the number of employees. The concerns, I guess generally speaking, raised address the multiple activities on such a small piece of real estate. The public hearing closed and the Commission deliberated, and subsequently the Commission continued the matter for 90 days. And I'm sure in your staff report you'll see that to allow the applicant adequate time to provide noise mitigation analysis, as well as trying to determine the decibel relationship to the city general plan standards, a traffic impact analysis, discussion of pedestrian safety, and the on-site circulation, and so forth. The matter then was further continued. We didn't see it again until April 13th. And my inquiry to staff indicated that it was a combination of the applicant reanalyzing the site, coming up with the studies that we'd asked for, and coordination of city staff and their comments on the plan. So on April 13th, we had another Planning Commission study session, as typically is our case, and we reviewed a revised plan. Let's see what happens. Operator error, sir. I'm sorry. Thanks. One more. All right. So this is the revised plan, as Mr. Ludicky pointed out to you. It eliminated the coffee shop, moved the car wash further south, instituted a detail shop area, eliminated one of the driveways, and dealt with the circulation issues. So questions were still raised about the traffic signal matter and the detail shop impacts to site circulation and vehicle stacking, which was the city regulations require a minimum of 7 vehicles stacked for this type of a use, or fast food or anything like that. So at any rate, those issues were addressed. And I might point out the concern relative to the traffic signal. Apparently, and from what we were told, at this intersection, there has been a requirement and a mitigation in place for a number of years here in the city as it related to the Antelope Valley Hospital Medical Center development. And I'm sure some of you city council members who were planning commissioners will remember that, but that mitigation required a traffic signal to be installed some years ago. Still hasn't been done, but at any rate, that was an issue that was of some concern to the members of the Planning Commission as to why it wasn't installed and how this proposed development might impact traffic in that vicinity. At any rate,
this is that intersection.
Beg pardon?
This is that intersection that
yes.
they did. All right.
Apparently so. So the solution was this traffic calming methodology, right in, right out, as an interim measure. Which
so who's picking up the traffic signal?
Beg pardon?
Who's picking up the traffic signal?
You know, that's a good question, and I think you may want to direct your inquiry to your city staff. I have no idea.
I can't hear you.
That I'd like to ask Jason, who's been dealing with the hospital, to address our discussions with them on that. If you'd like it now, or let Mr. Voss finish, whichever you'd like.
I'll let Mr. Voss finish. Is it Voss or Vos?
It's always been Vos.
Vos. That's what I thought.
Yes. It's a good thing, Mark. I didn't hear you, so it's.
I just didn't want to go home and have my wife yell at me for getting it wrong.
You know, wives never do that. They just have discussions, don't they?
That's correct.
At any rate, so we did, again, hear the matter on April 20th, went through a similar number of speakers, although there were a lesser number. However, the commission did consider everything they'd previously heard and all the correspondence they had. And after we heard concerns of the community as it related to the traffic signal requirements and the noise impacts and the neighbors' concerns in their medical facilities, we closed the hearing. And the deliberation began. Most members of the Planning Commission raised some issues. The traffic pattern on site and the appropriateness of the business in that location was a concern of some members. The vehicle stacking and the poor use of the space was a concern raised by one member. I interpret that to mean the type of use, appropriateness of the use in this location. And finally, again, the traffic signal at the intersection and why it was not either part of this development or hadn't been installed previously. At any rate, it was my opinion as chair, after hearing all of this, to pull it to a conclusion. I asked for a motion to approve. No one offered any. There were 6 members of the commission present. Mr. Jacobs had recused himself because he has a similar business in a nearby location. So we only had 6 members present. Since no one offered a motion to approve, then I concluded as chair that specifically that the project would adversely affect the health, peace, comfort, and welfare of persons working in the surrounding area because the proposed use is in an area described generally as office professional. The project is not compatible with the property and surrounding land uses, and the applicant did not demonstrate the need for the project with this, within this general marketplace. And finally, the project did not demonstrate adequate size and shape to accommodate the proposed use, including building placement and site circulation. So motion was offered and duly seconded and passed unanimously based on those conditions, which I believe are in your packet. And that concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Any questions?
I had a couple. The plan with the coffee house, can you pull that diagram up and show me exactly what the traffic flow is? That one. Can you show me the traffic flow I understand there's
proposed traffic flow at that.
right, there's two positions that are right on 17th Street or west.
Yeah, there are two ingress and egress points here.
Okay.
One near the center of the property and one to the further to the north.
And this may be a dumb question, but why couldn't they put an entrance right on Avenue J, right in front of the coffee house, where the parking is?
I think that answer would probably best
Mr.
be
Liddicky?
answered by your city staff. It's most the length of
More than
opportunity to
likely
ingress
it's
and egress is
restrictions.
very limited. So
So it wouldn't even be possible, right?
It certainly would not be desirable. We try to limit driveway placements on major streets.
Okay. The signal, I know, has been brought up many times, even without this. I was wondering, what is the coffee house proposed? Is that a franchise?
The applicant did not identify that. I think it's significant to note that the coffee house as proposed does not have a drive-through facility. That has a definite impact on the amount of traffic that we expect it would generate. And there is an expectation, at least on the part of staff in analyzing this, that some portion of the business would be expected to occur from people who are there getting their car washed, as well as some walk-in business from the immediate offices in the area.
From the information that we received from Callahan Rogers, and I won't even try to say the last name because I'll butcher it, they bring up the issue on page 2. They say that these issues still have not been addressed, traffic, noise, safety, parking, and so on, but Mr. Ludicky, you say that they have been.
To staff satisfaction, yes, they have been.
And then also, which you've already explained, the general plan, they're questioning that also, which you're saying is it, in other words, complies with the general plan.
Yeah, I think the key matter, as we indicated, is would the approval of the project, whether in this form or the other form, adversely interfere with or adversely affect the implementation of the city's general plan? And I think the answer to that is no. Once again, I think this is based on a supposition that you would get a certain type of development if you didn't approve this. And I think that's a false assumption, because there are a range of uses allowed under office professional, one of which is like the coffee house is shown.
Aren't we dancing a little bit there? I mean, come on, it's a car wash. And I have trouble calling a car wash office professional.
Well, but I think that comes...
I just don't like the dance.
Sure.
Okay?
I understand the comment. I think, though, that it comes down to what I had said before. I think it's perfectly appropriate to consider whether or not the size, location of the property is appropriate for the use. I guess what I was trying to say is I don't think simply the change in the general plan land use designation should be the basis for the denial.
I would agree with that. Okay.
And I might point out, when the
midstream.
commission considered this matter, Mr. Mayor, I might point out when the commission considered this matter, we considered it under the land use as commercial and the general plan as commercial. Subsequent to that, well after the commission took its final action, did the commission make a recommendation to amend the general plan to office professional, which you all voted in favor of. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, I had one more question, and I'm trying to compare this situation with the situation that is at the Chevron at Lancaster Boulevard and Valley Central Way. Because I know they have not only a car wash, but they have a McDonald's, and there's also a gas station. And it's on a curve, and it's at a signal, and I know that's a very busy place. How would you compare this with that one? Because I want to say also, there's not that many entryways and exits and things.
Yeah, I'm not sure the two are easily compared. We did go back and take a look at the area of that site at Valley Central Way and Lancaster Boulevard. Because that project was built in two phases. The gasoline station and the McDonald's was actually the first phase. The area that contains the car wash and the lube oil and filter place, the quick serve place, is about 0.9 acres compared to this site, which is about 0.7. And that's, what we looked. But once again, there's some shared driveway and some shared access there that I think make it hard to roughly compare the two. But we did go back and take a look at those numbers.
And one more question is can someone tell me when is the time frame for a possible signal, or is Mr. Cottle going to explain that?
With respect to the signal, we've been working with the hospital for a number of months trying to identify their fair share of that signal. It had been identified historically that a signal was necessary for the improvements that the hospital is going to make. We've kind of backed into identifying their fair share because of the phases of their development, but we've identified that fair share of around $400,000 for the hospital to pay for their fair share of that signal. Fair share being that the traffic impact fees that are paid will pay for signals throughout the community, including the car wash paying this traffic impact fee. Timing of that signal will be dependent upon the capital improvement plan and its priority within that setting. There are funds available for traffic mitigations, and where this signal is prioritized will depend upon need and demand within the entire system. So from a time frame, I don't have the answer for you. As relates to mitigating the signal, Brian had mentioned a right-in, right-out only for the car wash has mitigating effect of that signal, as well as working with the hospital to change their traffic flow that will lessen the demand on that signal for future. Phase one of the hospital's plan includes parking relocation, changes of access points, entry points, which will then lessen the need for that signal, and we're working with both of them to accomplish those goals.
So we don't know a time frame.
The short answer, no.
But we will consider it in the next CIP that we present to you in May of 2010 compared to all the other signals. And we will certainly do the analysis and recommend, and council could change at that point as well, too.
Any more questions of Mr. Vos?
Yes, if I could, please, Mr. Mayor.
His heart's as bad as mine.
I didn't hear what you said, sir.
I'm sorry, I have my bike off. It's reminded them your heart's as bad as mine, so let's not have him standing up there too much longer.
Okay.
I hope your heart is not as bad as mine.
Oh, that's right. You actually,
Fixed.
yeah.
Mine's
That's right. His is worse, sorry.
What I'd like to understand is to get my arms around from the time that the Planning Commission heard it and then continued it and had the developer do some extra studies and everything. So if we look at it and we come back from hearing what staff says, is that the studies came back and there was no significant impact for traffic, no significant impact for noise, and the municipal code states that there are adequate parking and stacking, and the use is actual under the commercial code. Then what we're looking at is that the Planning Commission left over is that they just felt that it wasn't, even though the use was legit, that it wasn't compatible, and the on-site circulation. Am I missing something if you take out of the mix the stuff that came back and was studied and came back with no significant impact and under our laws that we have now, would those be the two? Because there wasn't any definite findings or something in writing.
Well, there were, in fact, findings that the commission did make on its denial, and that's the recommendation in your first motion to uphold the Planning Commission's denial. That's the way it's written. But to get back to your first question, if I understand it correctly, Vice Mayor Smith, the application was filed in 2007, all right? It was not initially heard. First staff hearing
of this matter was June 9, 2008, and then on June 16, 2008, it was heard at the Planning Commission. It was continued for only 90 days, all right? Subsequent to that 90 days, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but we never saw it again, okay? We don't control the agenda in that regard, as you understand.
Absolutely.
So, there were issues that were raised, and you enumerated most of them, and then when it came back on April 13th, some of those same issues were raised again by the members, and on the 20th, I did point out to you, and it's in the minutes of the meeting, which comments were made by which members as it related to the concerns, traffic patterns, inappropriate for the business being inappropriate for the location as it related to the impacts of the medical offices and so forth. And those issues were raised at the public hearings and by some of the members as well. So that's what happened. The time frame?
Oh, no, I don't care about the time frame, really, except that the developer went out and did the studies, and then they came back, and so I would say that, I mean, if the Planning Commission still, after environmental studies were done, and still had concerns about traffic and noise and parking, even though it came back as no significant impact, then I'm just trying to get what's left over.
I don't think noise was, that was resolved, and based on the study, it was interesting that the study met the minimum or maximum requirement, whichever way you want to look at it, of 70 dBA, which if it was 71, then it wouldn't have met the standard. But the city didn't do the study, the applicant did. It was provided to us, we reviewed it, they accepted it. Okay. There we are. So.
Okay, thanks.
Why don't we do the studies? Why don't we just charge them so that we know that it's an independent study? I mean, it sounds like, this is the expert witness game that they do in trials. Well, I mean, seriously, why don't we?
What we have always relied on for biological or other studies that were not associated with an EIR of some kind is that we would take the applicant's study, we would review it, determine whether it follows methodology that seems logical and answers, in fact, the questions that we want answered. I would say in the case of both traffic and noise, we didn't accept the initial studies at face value. We looked at them, we studied them, we determined whether or not, in fact, there were questions that were unanswered as a result of those studies, the way they were presented. And I think, if I recall correctly, one of the things that was a concern was how much mitigation did you get in terms of noise reduction from enclosing things in concrete block and other questions that I think lengthened to some extent the way the studies were done. But in answer to your question, yeah, we generally have not done those on a third-party basis.
Well, what's the remedy if the doctor's office next door to it, if she walks out of her office and holds up a decibel meter and it's at 80 or 75? What's her remedy?
Following an installation of the project?
Yes.
We would go back and look at ways to try to bring it down to the level that it ought to be.
If that's my office, or in this case her home, I don't find that adequate. Because the reality is we know that it may not be able to be brought down. I mean, is there some way that we could build in a penalty clause that would go to the neighbors if in fact they violate it? Can we do that?
Yeah, I guess there's a way you could condition it to do that.
You have a conditional use permit that you can place any condition in that you want that's legal, obviously.
I mean, the ultimate remedy is the revocation of the use permit.
The thing we're dancing around here. Let me get you off your feet as soon as I can. I know.
I'm fine.
What I'm hearing from the vice mayor, and what I'm also sensing too, is the Planning Commission and others just don't like a car wash in that area. And so then we start nitpicking the project as to why, they don't comply. And, I just always found that very frustrating, that process, rather than to just say, hey, no car washes in a medical campus. Because essentially that's what that area is a medical campus. Am I correct? Is that really, is that your sense of it?
I often find it difficult to have people put words in my mouth, sir.
Yes, sir. But I'm very good at that.
That's why I'm stalling. There may, I can't get inside the minds of the members and what motivated them to take the positions they took. We took, I should say, not they, it's we. We voted unanimously to deny this project. And we made the findings as required by law, all right? We're limited as to what we could do, just like you are. So, the project on its face conformed to the general plan and the zoning as it was in place when they applied. However, the use required a conditional use permit. That brings us through this whole process. If it had not, then it would have been a staff review and approval, and staff would have, based on their recommendations to the commission, approved it. All right? So, are we dancing around it? I don't think so. We had 2 full public hearings. We received a considerable amount of correspondence and testimony, which I'm sure you're going to hear later from the same folks, and you'll be able to make that determination. But the use certainly is allowed in the zone, as was depicted on the original site plan, as depicted on the second site plan.
Okay. Thank you.
All right?
Anyone else?
Anything else?
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, sir.
Before we open it up to other people, could we go to the picture of it, the architect's rendition of the previous one before the coffee shop?
With the coffee shop?
Is it with? Yeah, that's what I want. It's the
This one, yes.
I'm concerned about the wall facing the doctor's house. Could you point to me where that is?
I don't. Well, if you look at the coffee shop in this, it's essentially this side, right here.
Okay. And for the car wash itself, where's the wall?
Yeah, right in here.
It's unarticulated, right? It's just a blank, flat wall.
Right.
I thought we were getting away from that.
Well, if you look at the staff report, if you do choose to approve one or the other of these, we have recommended 3 conditions that you add, one of them being that they do comply with the requirements as adopted ultimately by the Architectural Design Planning Commission. The project unfortunately precedes the creation of that body.
And is there any landscaping that's separating the car wash from the residence?
No, I don't believe that there is.
Is that because there's no room, or what was the reasoning there?
Yeah, if you go back and look at how this was done, this is up against. You see the car right there. This tunnel is up against that.
The lot line.
That property line. Yes.
Okay.
There is, isn't there, I think last meeting you said that there was a parkway planner and those things, part of the Architectural Design Commission, that's part of the recommendation.
Right, that would affect the frontage area here, but not this. There's kind of 2 schools of thought. I mean, I agree that I think you get a better feel at the property line with that. At the same time, especially if you have a wall in a building, we've had people who've complained that those become great hiding places for, the more nefarious among our citizens, during closed hours. So there is that side of it also.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. You all done?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the city clerk. Do we have some communications?
We did receive 11 letters in opposition tonight when the meeting started, and that's all we have right now.
One of them is from Dr. Ed Baker, who is my dentist. And in 20 years, with extensive dental work, I've never felt any pain in his office. And now I'm a little worried. I just thought I would disclose the potential conflict. Mr. Allen, I would hate to go from pain-free dental care to something different. Okay. Okay, Mr. Allen, do you want to go first?
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I would start tonight by simply pointing out that nobody has examined this project more closely and carefully than Mr. Ludicky, your own staff member, who, as you pointed out last time, works for you. He has told us that there are no concerns, no significant...
Sometimes we argue about that. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Understood. But he has told us, of all the people in this room, that there are no concerns regarding noise, that the concerns regarding traffic and parking have all been addressed. So I think that you, Mr. Mayor, are correct in asking what really then is the motivation for people wanting to oppose the project. And there are a few who have a legitimate concern. For example, the good doctor who lives next door on the property. If I lived there too, I would be concerned that this development might somehow impact my daily living. But the reality is that it's still a commercial zone, and there's a residence located in it. And so you're forced to sort of weigh in the balance the impact upon her living situation versus the desire of a private landowner to develop his property in the manner he intended when he purchased it. And that's a tough decision. So
It's always been the rub, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But as we sit here, Mr. Ludicky has pointed out that the change in the general plan has not caused a change in the zoning necessarily. And that even if it did, we still would go by the previous zoning that was in place on the date of the filing of the application. It's always been commercial. It remains commercial. So that's a commercial corner. And it's fitting that it be put to a commercial use. Another comment that I found interesting came from Councilmember Mann when he pointed out that during his many visits to the car wash owned by the Marroquin family, that he was upstairs on top of the car wash in an office and couldn't hear it. The technology in this field has increased tremendously over the last couple of decades, so I don't believe that that's going to be a concern to the adjacent properties. And frankly, when you look at the block wall between the doctor's property and the applicant's property, that will likely form a sound block deadening the noise coming from Avenue J. So if you do take out the decibel meter later, you're likely to get a lower reading than you get today, because now you've got block wall. I mean, what do they do on the freeways when they want to deaden sound? Block wall, 20 feet high. There's no better sound deadener. So I don't believe that this is going to have a significant impact on the neighbor, which leaves us with the simple question, why don't we want a car wash there? Is it because the doctors don't want to look at it? Is it because they don't want their patients knowing that there's a car wash on the corner and we're too good for that? What is the reason? Staff at every level here has recommended this project with reasonable conditions. We're prepared to meet all of those conditions. The project should be approved.
Well, if it was your office, why wouldn't you want it there?
I would want it there. I drink coffee daily. I'd be there half the time.
But we're talking about a car wash.
They're not that loud. Where I get my car fixed personally, I'm 25 feet from a car wash and can't hear it.
So what do you think about a remedy if at that entrance point the sound is over 70 decibels?
Well, I think we can address that beforehand by perhaps going out to similar properties with a decibel meter today, or sometime in the reasonable future, and seeing how much noise
you're dodging the question. The question is, what about a remedy for every time at some specified location that you exceed the decibel level?
Well, I think Mr. Ludicky suggested, and I would agree with him, that you put measures into place to correct the problem, whatever those may be. According to Councilmember Mann, the technology is there to keep these things pretty quiet. And that came from the council itself.
I've never found a more suitable motivation than having to pay for the intrusion if you violate it. I mean, it just seems to me that we should be talking about that. I mean, ultimately, if this thing is going to increase the noise level at the entrance where you say it's going to be 70 decibels, if it's not, there should be a penalty that goes to the adjoining landowner. And I just want, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because when everybody sits down, I'm going to be talking to these folks about that.
I would
so
suggest at this
if you want to comment on that,
Yeah.
you should do so now.
From the legal standpoint, that issue is not yet ripe because the injury hasn't occurred.
I would disagree.
We don't expect it to.
And then there wouldn't be any problem with saying, for every time you exceed it, it's a $1,000 fine that goes to the adjoining landowner.
Is there a precedent for that anywhere else in the valley? that
The thing you ought to be aware of is that with this particular mayor and this particular council, precedent hasn't really guided us too far.
Fair enough.
Okay.
But honestly, Your Honor, I called you Your Honor again. That's 2 meetings in a row.
I can understand
apologize.
the problem.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I think that Mr. Ludicki and his staff, in their examination of this, would have disapproved of the project if they thought that the noise study was somehow fraudulent.
I'm not saying it's fraudulent, but it's certainly subject to error. And what I really don't want to see is somebody who's lived there for 15 years now all of a sudden finding her dwelling to be uninhabitable because of the noise level. I understand that. I think you're probably correct that it is unfortunate that she's going to be staring at a wall, but people do have the option of developing the property within a reasonable manner. But what you don't have the option of doing is exposing her to an increased noise level day after day after day. And if you're telling us that that won't happen, then I'm suggesting you put your money where your mouth is and help us fashion a remedy if it does happen. I don't think that that's unreasonable. If it is, tell me why.
Well, the flip side of that, her use and enjoyment of her land is that these gentlemen have purchased this land for something like $550,000. They've invested $100,000 in various studies that the city has asked them to do. The city
They got a bargain,
of those studies.
At that price, at that location, they got a bargain.
Well, good.
It's a good deal. Let's be realistic.
But, they've done everything so far the city has asked them to do. Why this final imposition? The city has approved of the project.
Mr. Allen, because the council is obligated to protect the citizens of this community, especially when they're here claiming that it's going to impinge on their rights. I don't think that there's anything unreasonable at all of us fashioning a remedy if, in fact, what you say turns out not to be accurate. Not that you're telling me something that's untrue. It's just we really don't know. Until that thing is up and running and encased in concrete, we don't know.
But there are other ones like it, so we can know if we simply send someone out with a decibel meter to measure what kind of noises they make.
If it's that quiet, then you shouldn't be opposed to a remedy if it's not. But what that would then do is give you substantial motivation to fix it. If in fact the adjoining landowner now is being subject to a nuisance.
But that becomes
Subjected
a
to
legal
a
issue,
nuisance.
right? And the courts devise their own remedies for
And
that.
you and I
don't
both
think it's
know.
something that's
And you
really
and I
in front of
both
us
know.
today.
You and I both know the likelihood of her being able to get justice in regards to something like that is remote, given the current justice system and the cost of attorneys to do so. Neither one of us would take that case.
But there are people who would. If the impact were that substantial.
But I don't know who they are, and you don't know who they are. The reality is...
An attorney who works on an hourly basis would take her case if he does that area of law.
And precisely why she wouldn't be able to do it. Precisely why. All I'm suggesting is that you meet with your clients and come up with some ideas as to what you would think would be appropriate if, in fact, at that location where you told us it's going to be 70 decibels, that is, in fact, untrue or inaccurate as to what would be a suitable amount of money for each time there's a violation. Because I think that, to me, might serve might balance the inequity here.
Yeah. See, the decibel reading at the street, we were told by Mr. Ludicki, is substantially different than the reading at the back of the property, which will be adjacent to her home. Her home sits back quite a ways. And like I said, we'll have a huge block wall.
Well, what we're talking about then is just a listening point. I mean, we have to establish a listening point as to where. But what you told the Planning Commission and what you've told the council is that at the entrance to that car wash, the actual entrance to where all the noise is, that it's only going to be 70 decibels. That's where I'm going. So you may want to discuss it with them, and before we close the public hearing, come up with some ideas, okay?
Are you then, in essence, asking us to agree to a liquidated damages?
That's exactly what I'm asking you to do.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interject here, if we're going to have a protracted discussion about this particular issue, I'd like to discuss it as a council. While I agree with some of what you're saying, I disagree. I think there's some problems with that issue there, overriding for the whole thing.
I understand.
So I'd like us, before we...
But before I close if I close the public hearing, then they're not going to be able to address that issue.
It's the applicant. They can come back and we can add extra conditions onto it afterwards and talk to them about that.
Okay, just so long as they have the opportunity to address the specific of what I'm talking about, the specifics of what I'm talking about. All right.
But we firmly believe that based on the noise studies, there should not be a problem.
This isn't the first time you and I have disagreed.
No, but of course, we do it respectfully nevertheless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members.
Armin Agabian? Help me with the name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. I'm the architect, of course. If there's any specific questions, I can answer. But if I may just take you through the plans, both plans, I'm just going to give you a little insight because we've worked extremely close with planning for the past year and the time increments that has taken us up to this point, whether or not there has been this discussion about the delays or whether we knew or we didn't know, is that there was a lot of information given and directed to us by staff, by different departments of Lancaster, and obviously Planning Commission, hence where we are at this design. So the energy and the conditions placed upon us was quite a bit. There's 2 or 3 big lists that came through our office. We had to meet those, not just on a planning level, but public works level, fire department level. There are conditions that we have to think about, fire life safety. We have to think about drainage, and all these issues were impacted on this design. That's why we have this increment of time that we had to deal with the design. So if I can just, a few things I'd like to go over with the plan, just so you know, to get a feel for what's going on. It's just forward and backward. As you can see, the green area is landscaped, and the green area actually is kind of a setback area, which was required. And the reason why we've set the buildings in their position is based on zoning code conditions. The adjacent property, the doctor's property, which obviously is a residential and a work office, the residence obviously is a existing non-conforming condition. So in the future, if that thing gets sold or replaced, it has to be a commercial project. You cannot keep the residence. I may be wrong, and zoning can explain that to me a little bit further, but as far as I know from other cities, if that building gets touched, it has to conform to commercial projects. So the current condition of that site is a non-conforming condition, existing non-conforming. As far as having any kind of sound issues, this particular exit area of the car wash has a sound detonator on the end result of the car wash, which is the blower. Otherwise, the building block of this particular building has not only building blocks, concrete block, but it's going to have in its details a way to sound attenuate whatever that comes in or out of that building. As far as having any landscaping in the adjacent property, those issues were touched upon for the fact that we can place our building there, and obviously there's security reasons. If I can go back, I don't know if I have time, but if it's okay if I can take a minute more. These entrances and the way the circulation pattern was described to us were, again, relayed based upon public works, zoning, planning, fire department, backup spaces between cars, circulation spaces around cars, and all these things reviewed by the Planning Commission were conditions placed upon us to revisit, redesign, and make sure that it, based on their conditions, what they wanted to be fixed. So I guess one of the things that we noticed was they felt uncomfortable having certain types of programs adjacent to each other and having parking space requirements, which, again, these are all planning and zoning required and approved. So as you can see, when we do go forward, it's a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit streamlined. It doesn't have all the programming, minus the coffee shop. Obviously would have been great for revenue for the city, but all of these requirements, all of these, battery keeps dying, all of these programmatic requirements, all the parking requirements, the entry requirements, the public works requirements, the exiting strategies were directions given to us by planning, public works, fire department, and obviously the Planning Commission. The traffic study, the noise study, obviously were not certainly required by us, but we were obligated to do that by Planning Commission. And again, we are here to meet any staff conditions that are going to be placed by, from the Planning Department. We are here to meet the architectural, although it doesn't have the elevation, but the back entry parking area of, well, this is all parking, if I can go back to, oops, what did I do? Can I go, Brian? Sorry about that. As you can see, there's a driveway here, and then this is a medical office. This is the driveway of concern, and we have a block wall. Eventually, what was asked of us is that this wall be staggered, meaning kind of it got lower and lower as we came down, and we've articulated the back wall using the materials and colors of the block wall. So it's not just a blank beige facade. There is play on materials and colors on that, so you're not looking at a bland back. You're actually looking at something that has a certain amount of articulation.
Have you met with the adjoining landowner?
We have not. We were not asked to do that, and
I'm curious as to why that wasn't done. I mean, it seems to me that perhaps this thing could have been worked out with her, and
we were not asked to do that.
Especially the architect. I mean,
right. We are the architect. We are given direction from our client, and we are given direction from staff, different departments, and we move forward with that. As much as recommendations we would give to a client, we do not go above and beyond what we are asked, because it's not just asked of us. We do study the project thoroughly. We do look at the site conditions. We do look at what the conditions from planning and zoning is, because we have to meet fire department, we have to meet public works, drainage, backup requirements, fire life safety, circulation, design of the building, materials of the building, heights of the building, traffic flow, how you enter, how you exit, landscaping requirements. It's, and they're all chain of events, and each chain has a significant change on the next chain. So we do consider those things. In the building heights, if you look at the elevations, the building heights are not that high. They're not very tall buildings. They're single-story with accents, colors that are semi-earth tone, with the exception of the roofs, which we color designated just based on architectural design thought process. But there's a tremendous amount of landscaping. We've agreed to berm the landscaping so that we can somewhat cover and use vegetation, at least landscaping requirements that will meet drought tolerant, or landscaping requirements for trees, shrubbery. That was the intent, but we didn't feel, or we weren't given any direction actually to meet with the adjacent landlord. Thinking, so.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Mike Panausi?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and the City Council. My name is Mike Panucci. I'm a current business owner in the City of Lancaster. I own a car wash on Division and J. Simply, I would like to ask the city to, before they consider new businesses in the area, consider the existing businesses. There is currently 5 full-service car washes in the area. Also, there is 2 more coming. One, Costco is putting up a car wash, and also one on Avenue J and Sierra Highway. So simply, we're not going to survive. There is more car washes, and due to the economy, most auto-related businesses are hurting right now. So I don't understand the concept that there is, like, within the last year, those 2 other car washes got approved. Now we have 1 more. Also, as far as the noise issues, the developer was stating that the noise is mainly coming out of the exit of the tunnel. The noise comes mostly from the vacuum area and the detail area. And also, throughout all the tunnel, you have all the equipment in there. As far as any new equipments that you were mentioning that they have the technology that they don't make that much noise. I remodeled my car wash about 1.5 years ago, so most of the equipment in there is new equipment, and the noise is still significant in the vacuum area and the detail area. So basically, simply, I'm asking for the city to deny this conditional use permit for a car wash at this location because of the fact that there's existing businesses in the area that we need to be able to survive. So, thank you very much.
One question. I
Come
understand.
back, there's a question.
I understand noise from the vacuuming area. What sort of noise would be created from the detail area?
The detail area, you have buffers, you have the vacuums that they shampoo the cars. I don't know what type of a car wash this is going to be, if it's going to be a 100% hand wash or a full service car wash. There's that lot of equipment in the detail area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Vazirani? Yes, sir. I would normally allow you to do that, but that's kind of an issue, and since I already called her name, I'm stuck with her. But I'll let you go next, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Dr. Vazirani. I'm a pediatrician and a neonatologist, and I have been in that area, the described area, for the last 30 years. When I came, I bought this place from Dr. Tar, and Dr. Tar bought it from Dr. Nielsen. Dr. Tar was OBGYN, and Dr. Nielsen was a pediatrician. So this place has seen 3 different doctors.
She was my pediatrician.
There you go. There's the answer. And I hear she was a pistol. She knew exactly what she was doing. Anyways, I mean, when nobody else was there, I lived at the back, and I saw the jackrabbits, the quail, and all the bird sanctuary, and I have a very, very nicely, it's almost like an oasis in Lancaster, where I see all the migratory birds coming in. Besides the fact that I have lived there and raised 3 children who are doctors. After I heard about all the development, I watched all the new office buildings come up. I watched the building behind me. I watched the building next to me. I saw High Desert Medical Group coming over there. And none of them impacted my life. As a matter of fact, that was matter of fact. I knew this was a commercial place, and the person who's going to buy it is going to develop it. But as you rightly pointed it out, that there's a person who's going to get impacted by the noise, by the traffic, by all the people who are coming in, loitering in my property, which already has gone up to an extent where I've had 3 robberies there. That besides the point. The car wash that they are describing is right in front of my office building. Now, I see patients 8 hours a day, every day. I take call 24 hours a day. I see my patients, and I have a lot of clientele that are bringing their grandchildren to me. So in other words, I'm one of those grandmother doctors. I feel that when I'm making those life and death decisions, taking care of those sick kids, I should not be having sound humming in my ears 24 hours a day. And this is in my office, mind you. This is not my home. When they talk about 70 decibels, so that's a pretty large amount of sound coming in 24 hours a day. 70. Can I go?
30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
And I feel that that should be addressed. I live right behind. And when Mr. Ludicki said there will be no big impact, it was a silent place all these years. All of a sudden, I'm going to see 65 decibels there? And what does it take to give you hearing loss? It takes for hearing loss to happen, it takes 80 decibels, for which, constant exposure to it, that will give me a hearing loss. And what is going to prevent all this from happening? And besides the fact, those little children that are coming in and out, how many parents would be comfortable bringing those children over there with all that going on, right in front of my office?
Well, what do you think of what do you think of the idea of there being a fine that would go to you if they exceed?
I think that's absolutely justified, but why go to the fine phase? Why not look at a study, in an experimental way, in a scientific way, rather than a logical way? What's wrong with a scientific study? This is what my lawyer had attempted to get a sound study. I mean, why would you want to bring a noisy car wash where you have all these office buildings, all these people who are coming in sick? Half of them can barely walk. Now, I'm talking about office buildings behind me, office buildings on the side of me. Those are sick people. They want some peace and quiet. They don't want this noise.
The only thing, I don't know what my colleagues are thinking, but what I'm thinking about is the sound. Yes. I think that there's property rights.
Yes.
That these people do have a right to develop it within whatever the zoning is, and I think you agree with that.
Yes, I do.
And as long as they meet the new standards, I think it's going to be attractive, because the Architecture and Design Commission has been working a year on increasing the standards. But the noise, to me, is an issue.
It's a major issue.
Now, but I also think that if we put a significant penalty, then make it easy to enforce, that they will make certain that it doesn't exceed 3 decibels of whatever the ambient noise level is now.
Well, that's exactly what we are saying, that you tell us that, those decibels are there. I am a doctor. I know all about decibels. I know all about hearing loss. I can probably give you a lecture for 2 hours on decibels.
But what you can't do, what you can't do is tell me that there's going to be hearing loss unless it reaches 80 decibels.
Right. I can understand that.
But that's not what my concern.
Right.
My concern is that when you walk outside your front door, that there not be an increase of sound over 3 decibels.
Right.
So why don't we just fashion a remedy so that if there is, that it will be harsh enough that they will fix it?
If it can be enforced, I would love to see that. I would love to see that, because as it is, when I had the robbery, in my offices, I was told, hey, we are not going to do fingerprints and we are not going to do footprints because you were not killed. So,
but we are fixing that now. They're much more.
I'm just talking about fixing. I'm talking when the fix has to be given. Before, the best thing is to prevent a disease rather than go and then attack it and then try to cure it. You prevent a heart attack, rather than going in there and removing those plaques from it.
Careful, you're getting a little close to home here.
I have always learned prevention is better than cure. And I think you as the people who are watching over all of us, we are simple people. We are just simple taxpayers, I'm not a wealthy person, even though I've been there for a long time, because I treat only children. So I don't get a lot of millions of dollars.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Basrani. I'm exceeding the rules with you. That's why I'm cutting you off.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's my fault, but thank you.
This is just out of curiosity. Have all the council members heard a real car wash up close?
Well, my concern is we have a knee-jerk reaction to what a car wash is, because all of my experiences with car washes is they're really, really loud, and I watch movies and you can't hear people talk, and, so...
Googled and I got an MP3 of a car wash, and I have brought the CD with me. If you get a chance, hear it.
But what the applicant is telling us here is that this is different. And I'm saying, okay, maybe it is. And if it is, as long as you're going to be accountable for it, perhaps that would be okay with you. And
50 decibels, we are not talking just hearing us. We are also talking other pollution of the noise.
No, I know. It raises stress levels.
I
Yeah.
cannot, where to, make decisions.
And I totally agree that you should not be subjected to that. And where I'm thinking is trying to figure out a way that both sides can be happy. Okay. Okay. Joseph Zita?
I'm Joe DeZita, and I'm the attorney that's been mentioned back and forth here. I was at the original Planning Commission decision hearing where they denied the conditional use permit. I'd like to focus on a couple things and not repeat what other people have said. One of the big red herrings in this case, one of the big dancing things in this case, is that these studies have been done and they found no significant impact. Where's the red? Is this the red line? Here we go. This is my client's property right here. These are two-story buildings in the back here. So they're going to look over that wall. My client's bedroom is on the second story. This is 17th Street here. As you can see, it's not a throughway. At the last hearing, which I wasn't present at, but I watched it on your great video system, Mr. Ludicky told the council that they thought that people coming in here, and if there were too many cars there, that they would just drive away. There's another possibility here that hasn't been studied. That possibility is that 17th Street West is going to become a parking lot for this car wash, and cars are not going to be able to turn around and come back out. There has been no studies of that. We haven't, we now have, the issue of the coffee house back in here. We don't know what kind of coffee house it's going to be. We don't know what kind of traffic it's going to attract. There's been no study of it. We have an automatic significant impact here in that there's not going to be the traffic signal that the city has already stated is going to be required here. And we don't know, as Councilwoman Marquez found out just a few minutes ago, we don't know if, we certainly don't know when, and if we're not going to dance around this, we don't know if it's ever going to be put in there. So we don't know what traffic concerns, what traffic impacts there's going to be because of the stacking up on 17th Street, and we don't know the safety concerns. There's been no safety study. There's been a traffic and a noise study. All right? Now we don't know, we also don't know where everything's going to go here. There's going to be a detail area, perhaps, or a coffee shop, one or the other. There's going to be vacuums that aren't covered, possibly under one plan. This plan, we have uncovered vacuums over here. This plan, we have a detail area over here. We don't know. Under the law, and I appreciate, I fully concur with, there should be a post-monitor. If this project is going to be approved, first of all, there should be a post-monitoring thing set up to determine what actually is the case and to be able to impose conditions so that my clients don't have to bring suit. The basic problem here is that...
Okay, well, let me stop you for a second. Maybe the remedy is that if it exceeds that decibel level, they have to shut down.
Well, it may very well be. The real remedy in the law is that this should be studied beforehand, and it's a red herring to say that it isn't.
The problem I have with making people spend $200,000-300,000 grand to open a business is that it's killing us. It's killing the state. It's killing the city, and I'm not going there. I mean, I kind of like the way they do it in Singapore. You go get one permit and you open the next day. I think we should be promoting businesses, but I also think businesses need to be accountable. So help me. You got 2 minutes. Help me fashion a remedy.
I would put in a post-monitoring a post-approval monitoring arrangement. It should be studied ahead of time.
What is that? I know what you want. Now I want to talk about what I want. Talk to me about the post-monitoring system. How does that work? Have you do you have some familiarity with it?
At the very least, they're very typical in projects. They should have monitoring on, let's say, a monthly basis after the project's in place, so they get a range.
Is that reasonable, Mr. Liddicker?
I think it would be if, well, there need to be a couple of things. Number one, obviously, the affected adjoining property owner would need to agree to allow people onto the property to take the readings, and I think that the cost for having, because I'll tell you, I've learned enough that simply going out there and standing and holding a decibel meter, according to what sound and acoustical engineers tell me, is not the accurate way to do it. You need to do a little bit more than that. I think it should be incumbent, if we put in some kind of post-monitoring system on noise, that we set a number of times per year that it's studied, and the applicant basically pays the cost for that.
And what's the anticipated cost of something like that?
I couldn't tell you right offhand.
And isn't that something that we should do for a certain period of time? And if they comply, then we know there's no sense in doing it anymore, right?
Yeah, I would agree. It gets monitored maybe quarterly or every 2 months or something for some period of time after it's operating, and you assume that past some certain time, their mode of operation has been pretty well established, and they're not likely to change significantly after that.
Does that make sense to you?
Well, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you.
May I have 30 additional seconds?
Yes.
One red herring about this is that we're not being business friendly here. This applicant has come back after a year with a new project and an uncertain project, and does not have a CUP yet, has no vested rights. They can develop on their property. The only issue is whether they can have a car wash. And what's not business friendly is to now change this character of this neighborhood from a medical office building, which it is and which it should be, to something completely different. When we've already heard another significant impact from the other gentleman with the car wash here, it's going to drive other car washes out of business with competition.
Well, wait a minute. That's a whole different philosophical debate.
I have a question for...
Sure.
A question for Mr.
Yes.
Zita. Is it Mr. Zita?
Yes.
One quick question for you here. You're the law firm that we got numerous facts from, Callanan, Rogers, and Zita?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Mr. Zita.
And you're Mr. Zita. How long have you been practicing land use?
I've been practicing since 1980.
Land use law?
Yes. I've been a partner in my former firm since 1985. I just started this new firm as of July 1.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Nancy Schmidt. I remember you from last meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor.
You came much better prepared to this one.
Well, I'm here again to oppose the car wash, as you know, and I'm not only here tonight representing the building owners, of which I'm the agent at 1672 and 1669 West J, but also some of the doctors and dentists in my building who are unable to be here. I believe you have their letters, including Dr. Edward Baker, Dr. Gary Grubb, Antelope Valley Family Health, Dr. Fred and Dr. Pat Harkins, and Dr. Clive Kennedy. And they've all been tenants of mine between 15 and 25 years, and certainly have watched the area grow, and until this point have had no objection to any growth. It's the specific plan. Again, we can repeat again all of my complaints of noise, traffic, and everything, but I do have some specific questions that I actually am thinking about now that I'm here. I would like to know if they said the current ambient noise in that area is 60 decibels. And is it only going to rise 10 decibels with the addition of the car wash? Unless I misunderstood Mr. Ludicky, I thought their current readings, they said it was at 60, and then the highest is going to go is 70, or we're going to have 70 additional from the car wash. And another concern I have is the one building that's just east of the car wash. If you see how the 17th Street dead ends, and if they pull in and, let's say the line's too long, they don't have time, they're on the lunch hour, they're really going to have a tough time making a U-turn. And I think what is going to end up happening is, and not just visitors, but also employees, is pulling into my parking lot to go through my parking lot to make a left back onto J, because they won't be able to make a left out of that intersection. So that puts me in, do I have to hire security to watch so that I don't have employees at the car wash parking there, that I don't have everybody taking a shortcut through my parking lot? The employee thing was another question I had. He said 6 to 8 employees is what he anticipated. And I really can't understand how, especially with two businesses, a car wash and a coffee shop, can have only 6 to 8 employees. You've got vacuumers, managers, cashiers. Usually, I would guess if there's 4 vacuum stalls, they would normally have maybe 6 to 8 dryers because they can get them through faster. You've got at least a couple people in the coffee shop. I think they're probably more accurately maybe 14 employees in reality. And the project only has 20 stalls approved, although it's required to have 24. They were going to give them a variance to have only 20 spaces. So I think all these are really important before they make the decision. It does affect, it affects the whole area also as a medical facility. So.
Thank you. I think that's it. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's be realistic. Okay. So, let's open up for discussion.
Well, I think since there's been we have to close the public hearing first.
Oh,
okay.
Close the public hearing. It's amazing how those doors open and close.
I know. Since we've had so much discussion about liquidated damages, maybe we should discuss that before we go on to whether we should approve the project or not and what conditions and everything.
Well, it just seems to me people should be accountable. You know, I get weary of, people coming in and saying something's going to happen and then it doesn't. I remember when I was on the Planning Commission, I still drive by places thinking they never did do that. Or, they sort of did that. Different types of landscaping, different types of mitigations that, were presented from the podium or the lectern as being wonderful, but the reality was something different. And I'm just thinking that we should build in some type of accountability. And I don't know what the way to do that is. Liquidated damages are one way. A more draconian way is you have the listening post, or whatever you call it, the monitoring post, or the area, and if it turns out that their expectations were unwarranted and the noise level is higher, we just shut the business down. I mean, that's a little more draconian. That ends up costing people over $1 million. I mean, I don't know what it costs to build a car wash, but I'm assuming that by the time you're done, you're well over $1 million. That just seems more draconian to me than just having some type of daily fine that goes to the adjoining landowner.
Here's the problem I have with it, and while I agree that, and I was on the Planning Commission for quite a while, and some longer than others, and is that, CEQA itself, or the CEQA standards that we use when we look at any environmental impacts like this, is pretty onerous just on its face. And I think built into the studies and built into the numbers that are put there are the flexibility that you are going to have some variances in that. And it's not something that's black and white on some of these studies anyway, or some of these actions. Here's my biggest problem with it. Avenue J is a major thoroughfare. So if that car wash goes in and they make it at 68 decibels this month, and then you have a business that goes in down the street, that the traffic increases to get there, how do you scientifically start distinguishing between the traffic that's building up during this period of time, and then who are you going to ding? That's
because it's a question of sampling. I mean, I don't think that, and Mr. Ludica, you might be able to help us, but you know, there's sampling methods you could use. If the traffic increases and then there's a rise in the noise, we'll have enough data at that point to know that it's coming from something other than the car wash. There's also what kind of noise is coming out of that cave the cars comes out of, and I think it was the detonating event is the blower. I mean, if the blower starts malfunctioning and it gets noisier, I mean, I don't know that that's a significant problem. What I see is a significant problem is people don't believe us, and I think that Dr. Vazirani has every reason to be suspicious that right now it's just words, because there is no enforced accountability of it.
No, and I agree with you on that. What I think is that we're going down a path that has a larger overriding policy issue for the city rather than for the specific site. I am one, and I think I have a long history of saying this publicly, is that I'm not one to, implement policy and change policy on the fly for the clamor of the moment. And if we do go down that path and say that this is what we want to do for this one, every single project that we get has the same complaint of, is there going to be more noise? So are we going to set a policy now that for every single development in the city, if it goes above the CEQA levels, are we going to ding them? But then you have other mitigation. Then you're going to have people saying, well, how about if the fire times slow down less than what the CEQA levels say? What if the traffic gets a little bit heavier than the CEQA says? And I just think in my gut, I don't like the idea of liquidated damages and then who's going to be the police? We're going to start a nuisance noise abatement, section that we go out there, or put the cost on top of the business owner and say, okay, now if you build in the city of Lancaster, you have to attach to that and build into your business model, taking and paying a scientific impacts type company to come in and check the noise level every month or every 3 months, and then pay staff time and pay additional licensing fees so they can come back and staff can evaluate it and we can have another public hearing on it. I think it's just a quagmire that at this time I personally would not like to go down. I know what you're trying to do and think creatively, and I like that in this instant, but I think it has overreaching implications that I wouldn't want to approach it this time.
Well, who says that because we do it one time, we have to do it a second time? I mean, whoever said that? Whoever said that whatever we do, we have to keep doing because it's now a policy? I mean, it's not. What it is we have a specific problem with specific people that have specific fears that we're in a position to alleviate. And I'm not going to feel bound to do it with the next person that comes in just because. What makes this unique is we have a transition from residential to commercial. And how do you ease that transition? The other way, in a free market economy, the way to do it, if we were all libertarians, which I wish we were, buy the property next door. If you're going to impact it, buy it. Or sit down with them before you design it and make a deal and sign a contract with them. But none of that was done here. It was thrown in our lap. And I do not think that a physician who has served this community for that long should have to fear this. I think we should put in safeguards.
Right. And there's the rub with your argument on that it doesn't set an overriding policy. The reason why it does, and the reason why government should do that, is because then you get to the point where you're picking and choosing who you're going to ding and who you're not going to ding. And that's why we set general plans. That's why we try to set policies. So we take that personal, like you said, well, this poor doctor here. Well, So the other person that's complaining about noise, they haven't been in the community long enough to have that same criteria put on them. And that's what I'm saying. If we go down that path, we start creating this thing of we're picking and choosing who we're going to put that onus that we've never done in the city. I don't know, how many cities do. A number of times we've done on a CUP, and everybody knows it's a 6-month continuance to look at the CUP. But on those cases, it's not something that fits within the CEQA regulations. It's usually like we had it wasn't going to be a bar, but it was going to be a family fun place over on Sierra Highway, and we wanted to make sure it didn't turn into a bar. And so we said, okay, come back in 6 months and we're going to look at that. But other than that, I don't think the city's ever gone down the path of we're going to do some scientific investigation down the line. I still think...
And perhaps we should. Perhaps we would have a better city if we built in some type of accountability. And you're correct, it shouldn't matter if she was a doctor here for 6 months or for 60 years. But what does matter is that, all I'm really seeing here now is we see it in trials all the time. Every trial I have, some insurance company hires some expert to come in and lie. And I'm not saying that occurred here, but the nature of the beast is that these so-called experts pretty much say whatever you want them to say, because they're in the business of doing that. We don't have an independent expert that we know has given us some clear assurance that she's not going to be bothered by this noise. We don't have that. What we have is the assurance of the applicant. And I say, okay, I'll believe the applicant as long as there's a safeguard. If you're inaccurate, then you need to be accountable for it. And if that's a new policy for the city, then hallelujah. It's called we're going to make people accountable for what they say. And if you make a promise to us, you should be accountable for it. If you want to institute that policy, let's put it on the ballot. Let some people vote, because I guarantee you they will vote yes on it. People should be accountable. If you're going to build this and it's not going to be noisy, what's the problem? What's the problem?
I think when you phrase it in those words of putting it on the ballot and making people accountable, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with you, Mr. Mayor, on that.
Okay, then I don't want you to. See, I want you to hold them accountable, too.
Thanks. I still disagree with it. And I think that government becomes too onerous. And yes, you could go down the line and you could implement so much legislation and so much policy that you could equate to say this is good for the people. But how far does government go? It goes the opposite of the libertarian that we were speaking of. But that's just how I feel on this project here. I think that the landowners, and if we're going to do a policy, if we're going to make changes, then some of that stuff has to be done up front. And just on this particular issue, I know that there was a McDonald's or something. We did a bunch of sound studies and stuff on the Mariquin's McDonald's down on 30th and K. And but liquidated
Doesn't
damages.
Hernando have a hearing aid?
He's not the one doing the sound study. So, but, I mean, we could talk about that issue. There's some other issues that I have with the particular project, but I thought we'd talk about the liquidated damages issue first.
If I could touch on that, Vice Mayor Smith, I think that was very eloquently put. I agree virtually 100% with that. Mayor Parris, I understand your concern with what if the sound study isn't real. But I think...
Don't we really know it's not real? I mean, it's not even built yet. Come on. It's not real. It's an expectation.
Okay. Either the predictions are accurate or they're inaccurate.
Right.
If they're accurate, we don't have an issue. If they're inaccurate, what do we do about it?
Right.
And under the current system, Brian, help me out here if I'm wrong, but if Dr. Vazirani came back to the city after it's built and up and fully operational and said, I can't see patients, it's too loud, what would we do? Would we not have a sound study done and see where we're at? And either that gets mitigated by the applicant, or we pull the trigger and say, you're out of business. I think that's a pretty strong incentive for the applicant to have accurate
sound studies done when we asked them to do them. I think
Doctor, I'm sorry, you really can't do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian?
I think there's a couple of things probably at work here. First of all, we're kind of in this position to some extent because of what CEQA does require, and you're supposed to, at its core, CEQA's intent is you as decision makers are supposed to be able to sort of understand what the ramifications of your decisions are. I think what it sounds like is, for better or worse, everyone's accepted that the projections being made here on noise and traffic, for that matter, are that, based upon what we can tell, there's not going to be a significant effect as it's defined. I think the other problem that seems to be coming out here, though, and Vice Mayor Smith kind of alluded to it, how far in the future is the applicant responsible for changes in the environment that may or may not be their creation? I think you could reasonably set up a situation where, if this were approved, you have maybe a different noise consultant than the one that did this, just for matter of someone feeling that it's more fair, go out and say, okay, this is the ambient noise level in that area right now. Based upon the noise study, we expected that these were going to be the increases. You build the project, you operate it for some period of time, however it is to get them to their normal operation level, then you send them back and you say, okay, do the study now with everything in place. Is it a 3 decibel increase? Is it less than 3? That's the best that we can tell. Has the applicant done everything that they should have done to mitigate the expected problem?
Do that monitoring as a one-time event?
As a one-time event, because once you start getting further and further away, I do agree that there's a problem in terms of how do you begin to disaggregate out other potential effects, and I think the largest of those is increases in traffic, and one that we may not have even thought a lot about. This is being measured based upon current traffic flow. What happens when that intersection does become signalized in the future, and now you have traffic stopping and starting? It may well be that with traffic stopping, you may have, for some periods of time, a decrease in noise along part of the frontage, but it's certainly going to be different. I think the quietest time on an LA freeway is when the traffic's jammed,
Mr. Ludicky, you're not seriously sitting there telling me that we do not have the engineering and scientific capability of figuring out what is increased ambient noise and what is noise caused by the car wash. I mean, that is clearly ludicrous. It just doesn't work that way. That's why you have sound engineers. That's why we have sophisticated equipment to come in and figure these things out. It's precisely what you said. You cannot stand there holding a decibel meter up in the air. Correct. So let's not go down that path unless you can tell me that you believe that we are incapable of see how sound is? That we are incapable of figuring out whether or not that car wash is compliant. Are you telling me that?
I think you can do that.
So we don't have to worry about increase of noise from the streets in regards to figuring out if this applicant stays compliant for whatever period of time we want to set. Correct?
I think what you would do is a noise, I'm not an acoustical engineer, but obviously they would go back to what the original base readings were and try to figure out from that what has occurred as a result of the car wash and what has occurred as a result of changes around it. All I was suggesting is that there probably ought to be some definitive end to that analysis, because the further and further you get away from those original studies, I think it does get a little more difficult to try to understand.
Well, and I would agree. I don't think that this is something we do in perpetuity. But I do think that we should build in some type of accountability. Otherwise, it's just words. It really is. It's just words.
And then I think the second question is, suppose there is a violation. Suppose the noise increase is 4 or 5. I would assume that traffic engineer or acoustical engineer would then be charged with saying, how do you mitigate that? How do you go back and reduce it back down to that level? And obviously the applicant ought to be responsible for doing that, assuming that big if that it could in fact be done.
Or buy an easement from the adjoining landowner. I mean, it's
that's
it
kind
really
of
is a
getting beyond
market
my area, but true. Yeah.
Well, just so long as unless there's some type of accountability amendment to this or addendum to this, I'm going to vote no on it. And so if you guys think you have the votes without me, do it without me. But if you want me to vote yes on it, I need to see that there's some accountability and that the adjoining landowner isn't going to be driven out of her business. And it should be a simple thing. It either is going to be quiet or it's not going to be quiet. If it is going to be as quiet as they're telling us, what's the problem? But if it's smoke and mirrors, you really shouldn't build it because it's not going to be profitable.
Well, I think two things that you can do to maybe satisfy what you need is like I said before, I was against a liquidated damages in perpetuity. But what we have done in the past and what we're allowed to do on a conditional use permit is we can set it for a 6-month review after C of O. And so if we do that, then we just have to, maybe like you said, if the landowner, rather than them hiring it, Brian, don't we, like on some environmental impacts and everything, we send in an RFP and we actually get even though the developer pays for it, we're the ones that actually go through and hire the scientific impact services or that's the name of a company, but the scientific services to actually do the impact report. So that's what I would do. That would be one, is to say 6-month review after C of O. And then also, as part of the mitigation within the CUP, is to say that there is certificate of occupancy. Part of the.
If I don't know, there's some other folks out there that don't know either.
Hopefully they do, because he's the one taking notes. The other thing is I think that we can put as part of the mitigation within the CUP that there would be no outside music, because a lot of times the guys doing the car washes and everything, they like to play the boom box real loud, they like to do that, all that increases, and that would be stupidity for you to do it on the first place since you're going to get sound checked anyway. But I would say that no outside music on that, because that, even if you have the decibels down, those bass things. So on that aspect of it, I think after we have the rest of the discussion, if we decide that that's what we want to go through, then we could do that.
So what happens if, first of all, what I would suggest is that we do it twice. We do it at 6 months and then we do it at a year, because presumably the business gets more busy after it becomes established. So what if we do that and then the noise increase at the doctor's business is more than 3 decibels? What's the remedy?
Well, the remedy in the past for all of it is that they have to meet within their CUP, and we can review it then. I don't think we necessarily have to set it for a year. Usually our game plan is we usually set it for 6 months. We take the information then, and we can set it for another 6 months. And you can actually set it for another 6 months after that. So,
is this something we could give to the Planning Commission?
You could, you possibly could just give it to the Planning Commission for a 6-month review after this.
Okay, so Mr. Ludicky, what happens if it's 80 decibels and now her hearing's being damaged? What do we do? What do you do?
The first thing is to determine from the acoustical engineer and their study whether there are physical measures that can be taken to reduce the noise back down to the levels that we expect. Beyond that, if it's impossible to do that, in other words, if the noise analysis was so wrong, that was done and that we relied on, that it missed it by that amount, I think you then have to seriously consider, whether you allow the use to operate within that location. That becomes the ultimate remedy in that. If there is no...
So why isn't that just self-executing in what we do today?
Because the theory behind it is that the city, having been the grantor of the permit, has to be the one that physically takes that away. And I think that's a due process issue, although maybe the city attorney would talk to that a little bit more.
Can we make it self-executing?
It's just, under the existing municipal code, there's a revocation process, and so to the extent that we deviate from that, and that process obviously is to ensure due process, and that would require a pre-revocation hearing, for example. So,
but isn't that due process that we're talking about a guarantee of denying her due process? Because the reality is it never happens. When's the last time we took a license? And do you have a recollection of ever taking a business license for noncompliance?
The Desert Inn.
The question is directed to me.
The Desert Inn? We didn't take their business license. We simply fenced it off. Now,
so we'll just fence the car wash in.
Well, but that would be fine if I was mayor, but I'm not going to be mayor forever. I mean, I probably would fence it off if they came in here and lied to us, and it was destroying the health and safety of the people around it. Of course we would, but we're not always going to be sitting up here. And what I want to see is I want the citizens of this city to know that it's not a bunch, that we're not just dancing with them. We're not just saying a bunch of words. I think half the Walmart project was that, because they no longer trust us. These things get built, and then they just no longer trust us that we're going to do anything, because the reality is we don't.
A conditional use permit is on condition, and I think the threat of pulling a conditional use permit, and we have pulled conditional use permits before, can talk about the skating rink that's always come and complained to us before too. And we have. When they go out of compliance of the CUP, then we yank it, and that's even worse than liquidated damages. That's actually, you don't do business anymore. I think they would be in the form of, they're doing businesses, they put a revolving garage door on the end of that thing to open and close every time a car comes out, if they have to. I mean, they would do something to mitigate it if it was that much. But I think built into the flexibility of the CEQA numbers is that, just like everything else that you do, you say, okay, look, this is the number. It's like the doctor says, hey, you can't take more than these 3 pills. Well, sometimes people take 4 or 5, and they don't die, but they have that, it's like the expiration date on milk. You can still drink it afterwards, but we'll try to protect you a little bit.
What are you saying?
So, well, that's my suggestion, is that independent, we send the RFP out, 6-month review, and we look at it then, and we see what happens, and we might just be happy-go-lucky, or we might say, hey, you got to make some major changes, and we're going to review again in 6 months.
I would suggest that we make it absolutely mandatory that if they fall out of compliance with that, if it becomes a substantial impact, that they not be allowed to operate. And this would enable the adjoining landowners to go seek an injunction to stop them from operating. But I want it to be unequivocal. If you give them 30 days to rectify it, if they haven't rectified it in 30 days, the landowner has a remedy independent of us. And that's what I would recommend. But you guys...
If clarify that condition, that the 6-month sound study, and it comes out they're not in compliance, they get 30 days to fix it. If it's not fixed in 30 days, they're shut down until such time they do fix it?
Along with it being that it remains a requirement that they not have an adverse impact on the adjoining landowners in regards to noise. And if at any time they exceed that, then it would be up to the landowner to prove it to a court and get an injunction to stop it. But I want it to be unequivocal that business will not exceed that noise limit absent an easement from the adjoining landowners. I mean, this is a property right the adjoining landowners have, and I don't want to facilitate the taking of it without them being compensated for it.
Well, two things on that, Mr. Mayor. One is we've gone back to then doing this for perpetuity again.
Well, of course it would be perpetuity, because at the mouth of that cave, it cannot exceed 70 decibels. If it does, they have to rebuild it.
Right, and so that's what I disagreed with before, is doing it for perpetuity. What I do think, though, is that any other mandates that we put in the CUP of due process, I think the city already has, and the city attorney over here will say, we have the due process to make it mandatory after the hearing. And so, but you have, the landowner has to have those due process rights to go through, and the city has that in place. And that would be the 6-month review. If they haven't met it in 6 months, then I can't say it off the top of my head, but they have a certain period of time to get it done. They have an appeal process. They have everything that goes through. It would go to the Planning Commission, then it would come to us, and we would go. And we already have that in place, and so I think making any other additional due process built within the CUP is just duplicative.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the one-time review, a set period of time to fix it, whether it be 30 days or whatever is reasonable. And if they can't meet it, they are shut down until such point in time they can achieve that verified by monitoring.
With a separate RFP. I mean, with a
Yes.
separate,
Yes.
with an independent RFP done by staff.
You're right, I don't want to pay for it.
Right. I would agree with that as well.
Okay, so is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
I just had,
We have other.
Yes.
I know, but I'd like to hear from.
I just had one other question. Along with those, I'm good with that, but it was brought up, is this going to be reviewed by the Architectural and Design Commission?
We would. Yes, it is. That's what he said.
There's 3 additional things, that we'd like on that are in the staff report that go towards that. 2 or 3 items.
Not a review, but an addition as well.
As part of the motion, that would be appreciated.
Yes, yes.
In fact, I took notes on it. I think Mr. Ludicky said there would be 3 additional conditions if we approved it tonight that staff would be adding, and that would be, one is the screening, the elevation, and the parkway planter. Is that correct, Mr. Ludicky? At least last week, that's what I wrote down.
Yes, if you look at, yeah.
Okay, so do we need a motion to include that into the recommendation, or do we wait for the motion to approve it and put it in? However, I just so long as we're clear that it does not satisfy my concerns, and I will vote against it. I will vote for the change in the recommendation. I mean, tell me how to do this procedurally.
By consensus, do we have that change?
Can we do it that way?
I think we just do it as one motion at the end once we get to that point. I think it would be sort of, we're getting the cart before the horse to vote on a change of a CUP when we haven't even decided to vote for the CUP.
But for purposes of discussion,
And that's what I'm asking. I'm asking procedurally, Mr. Ludicky, do you want to change the staff recommendation to put in what we want? I mean, help me out here. Come on, Joe, you're the lawyer.
It would be by motion, Mr. Mayor, when we get down to the point of adopting the CUP. That would be our prerogative.
It would actually, the prerogative of the maker of the motion, could state the motion simply following the staff recommendation with some modifications, some additional conditions or modified conditions. It would just be up to the maker of the motion. From that point, then, if another member of the council wished to propose an amendment, then the amendment could be taken up.
Okay, so before we get to that point, then, what else do we want to discuss in regards to this particular project? Other than their utter lack of accountability.
6-month closing down their business. And can we put the fencing in there? We could put the fencing in there.
Careful.
There you go.
Careful.
It's good.
I don't want to leak the public secret, but the fencing was a 5-0 decision in the executive session, and although you guys were more than willing to let me take the rap for it, it was a 5-0 decision. Now, do we want to talk about fencing any further?
Rap? I thought it was a good thing. You got all the good credit for it. Okay. I think with this particular one, the thing that arises for me as it comes from the Planning Commission and coming back, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you hit the nail on the head, that we're dancing around with saying, well, the traffic, go do a traffic study. The traffic study comes back and says no significant impact. We'll do a noise study. The noise study comes back and says no significant impact. Staff says that they've met the amount of parking. The stacking thing, I disagree with the council. I think he's wrong on that. I think that if you drive up to a business, if I drive up to El Pollo, what's that?
I said you disagree with the council.
With Attorney Zita.
All right. That council.
Okay, that council.
I get confused.
Okay, sorry. Is that, if I drive up to El Pollo Loco and there's 7 cars in the drive-through, I'm going to McDonald's or I'm going someplace else, and say I'm going to another car wash, and I don't think there's going to be 20, 30 cars backed up on 17th Street as a parking lot waiting to get into that. Unless they're doing it for 50 cents a car wash, it's not going to happen. So I think it's like you said. I think it's a use issue. And myself, I don't have a problem with the use issue. I think it's within the commercial usage. I think even changing, they changed it to office professional, but you can have a lot of those other commercial uses that will increase traffic, will increase noise, and do those other things. So I myself think that, I'm a little concerned that the Planning Commission sends it out for them, and then they come back, and then Mr. Luedecke says, okay, yeah, they met this, and we're recommending it with all these changes, but then it's denied. And I just feel that the applicant has met everything with staff above and beyond what would normally be done. I actually think it would be an appropriate use for that area. I think the traffic signal is another issue. I think the mitigation of the right turn only, right turn out, right turn in, helps mitigate it until time we phase in with the traffic mitigation fees and the hospital pays their fair share to actually get the traffic study done. So myself, the project with the coffee shop is the one that I would be leaning to, with the 6-month review on a noise mitigation by a separate independent RFP.
And you also said no outside music.
Yeah, no outside music.
Okay.
Right. I hate
So is that the
anyway,
motion?
I believe that's already included as one condition.
That no outside music is one of the
Posting of
conditions?
signs and, yes.
If there's no more comments, then that would be I would move that we adopt the Plan 1, or whatever we're going to call it, with the coffee shop, the one that I was given today.
That was 0984, I believe.
Is it
that
098?
correct, with the modifications?
We can still discuss it.
Yeah, that's true. We can get a second. We can still discuss it. That's true.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I would support the coffee shop, and something we haven't talked about, is from slightly more intensive use. I think a large number of customers are going to be car wash customers. I don't think there's going to be a large increase in traffic. But the aesthetics, with the situation of the coffee shop right along Avenue J, it prevents the visual aspect of looking straight down the bore of the car wash tunnel from Avenue J. I think it shields a lot of the business to the drive-by traffic.
I agree. I like the coffee shop idea. The added concern I have to this is I do go to the dentist there, and I go out of that intersection, and of all the places I drive, that really is the most dangerous intersection that I have to cross in the travels I do about town. It's incredibly dangerous without that signal. And I do have a concern that we're not tying the signal to this. Or making it so you can't make a left turn. But making a left turn onto J there.
You're correct. It's difficult. I thought we had that in there. Mr. Luedecke, isn't there like a mitigation barrier, so there's right turn in, right turn out only?
Yes, yes, it was basically
in that intersection.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And the developer actually does have to pay part of their fair share towards that street light also in the traffic mitigation fees.
The hospital talked you into $400,000?
I didn't hear what you said.
The hospital talked us into $400,000. We need a negotiation course here. What is that, $1.2 million, $1.3 million? What? And they got you down to $4 million?
After how many years?
what is it, Azerbaijan?
Yes.
Azerbaijan?
Yeah.
He is 10 times the negotiator you are, Jason.
No comment.
I want to send Jason out for some continuing education program here. 400,000?
And that's not a free internship in your office.
That's right. Let's send him to the Harvard class on negotiation. In the long run, we're going to make some money here. I mean, okay. All right. Any other discussion? Let's vote. Four to one. It finally happened, folks.
For the record,
passed.
you're not pandering, right?
Well, I don't think I am. Moving on. Oh, PH1? We got any cards? Okay, good. Mr. Ludicky? This one will go quicker.
I need your assistance again. Mayor Paris and members of the City Council, the item that's before you on this particular public hearing is consideration of an amendment to the zoning code to make it easier for individual homeowners to install small-scale vertical axis wind turbine systems. This particular ordinance would essentially modify a provision of the city code that's been in place since the early 1980s. At that time, the city established, I think, one of the first ordinances in the state that allowed a process for doing wind turbines. But given the technology of the time, which meant they were tall and big, it required a conditional use permit for every individual wind turbine request. And there has been quite a bit of advancement, surprising even to me, over the last few years in terms of the types of wind turbines that you can do on a small scale in residential areas. And these are the types of things that we're really looking at wanting to allow with an easier process in our city. The ordinance that's before you would not allow these things carte blanche. It would essentially still require a director's review process, but we're looking at a fee of approximately $350 versus a fee right now of almost $8,000. There would be a limit. You could not have a cage width or area across any larger than 6.5 feet. You would be limited to a maximum height of 5 feet to do these things. And you see here examples of the types of things that we're looking at. Many of them, as you can tell, are mounted on a roof. This really came to our attention largely because of requests that we were getting from residents in our community who were asking what were the city's regulations on doing these, and they'd be told you need to do a conditional use permit. And of course the reaction was that's more than the cost of the wind turbine. But the technology is really advanced. We think that there are enough safeguards in terms of the size and the setback requirements to ensure that there are not going to be really significant adverse effects upon adjacent residential areas. If something exceeds the expected or the sizes that we've demonstrated, which these essentially do, these would still have to go through the use permit process. But the small scale types of turbines, which are the majority of the things that we're getting questions about, would be allowed through a much easier process and an assurance that they do in fact comply with the width, height, and location standards. I think this is a major step in terms of signaling to people that the city is certainly willing to look at and encourage the use of alternative energy systems, even on a small scale setting. The Planning Commission did review this ordinance. They unanimously recommended to you approval of it, and we would also make the same recommendation.
Questions? Why can't we make it like $50? This is something we should really be encouraging.
We went down and tried to find under our existing fees the one that seemed the most appropriate given the same level of review that we would do. There are, I think the lowest director's review fee that we have is about $125 as a council. If you feel that's a more appropriate one, you could certainly go that direction.
So 125 would be a break even with us?
Well, we'd have to get more experience on it. I agree. I think the difference between the two, this is something we want to encourage. I don't often go with the lower number, but I think that's what we would recommend.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Jason probably wants to go with a lower number, too.
The answer to that is no. We'd start at 0.
I would, okay, is there a motion? Hopefully there's a motion to make it 125.
I'll move that we adopt ordinance number 933, and we determine the application fee should be established, director's review, at $125.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Let's vote. It's unanimous. And let's see if we can get some of these up. I mean, that's...
I've actually seen one in town, which obviously must prior to tonight was in violation. But clearly it was homebrew. It was perhaps 2 feet in diameter. It wasn't even mounted above the peak of the eaves. It was on the windward side of the house. It was not a breezy day. It was spinning quite fast. I was amazed at what was available. It looks like it was made out of scrap and sprinkler pipe. So they can't cost that much to.
What I would say is the free market's going to take care of it. The reason you saw a lot of evaporative coolers over the last several years is because they're cheaper on the electricity. I think with all the publicity out there, I think you're going to see these spring up all over the place.
Good.
They're economical.
Let's do whatever we can to encourage it. Okay. So how much of the load of a household do they assume?
I've seen numbers that say, depending on the size and so forth, that when you have pretty good wind going, you can power 1/2 to 75% of your need.
Does it go back onto the grid, or does it go into the house, or how does it work?
If you are producing more electricity than you use, essentially it'll run the meter backwards, is my understanding.
Net metering.
That is really cool. So the next question is this something we should be looking at as a requirement?
Looking at that, that's some internal discussion we've been having, and I think one of the things that, one of the most intriguing ideas that I heard, I think it may have come from a builder, was that when you're building houses, if you design them so they're oriented properly, why couldn't you do what you essentially do with attic vents, create some kind of venturi tube effect, put the turbines inside the attic, so to speak, and generate it there? Then you not only have, increased wind speed, but you avoid some of the visual effect, if you incorporate from the start.
The effect
Heat out of the attic, which is also what a whole house fan is for.
Right.
And the added impact is that it makes houses more likely to be homeowners rather than renters, because it takes a while to amortize the cost, right? So do we have somebody looking at that?
I don't know that we have anyone specifically looking at it, although I do know that Robert Neal, through the Public Works Department, has been investigating the general idea of LEED certification and energy efficiency in new construction.
Mr. Neal, could you add this to your list?
I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could jump in too, we're working on an AB 811 program, which we've been working on for a number of months, to actually give incentive to financing these types of improvements on homes through, it'd be typically a assessment district that you opt into, that the city would essentially finance on behalf of the property owner, which is a true solution to many, not just the wind turbine opportunities, solar, thermal heating of water heaters, any number of options that are available to a homeowner and business owner for that matter.
This AB 811, is that just for retrofitting existing, or can that be rolled over into new construction as well?
AB 811 is for existing homes and businesses. New construction, obviously, there could be legislation approved that require that at new construction, but the assessment district is for existing properties.
At some point in time, we need to have a discussion over whether we require those types of things or if we provide an economic incentive and leave it up to the discretion of the market.
Just keep in mind, what we have to do is we have to figure out a way to stop the investors increasing the renter load of our neighborhoods. And this may be a suitable way to do that. And it may be something we ought to have a goal date. I guess architecture design should be dealing with this. What do you guys think?
I don't know that they specifically have, but it's an issue we can raise with them.
Mayor Paris, would like to get back to you on a goal date, because we have been talking about LEED certification. We have been doing 811 as well, AB 811 too. We've been doing a lot of things, and we're coming close to them, but I can't give you a date right now.
Okay.
We can give you the council.
In the next couple of months, see if you guys can come up with a target date, deadline, okay?
Absolutely. We can do it before then.
Good. Thank you. Oh, that's right. Where did it go? You're supposed to keep me organized here, Ron. Where did it go? Whoever the speaker is on this, come forward and tell us who you are. I lost your card. And am I going to hear about that when I get home?
Teresa Malone, at least you didn't pronounce it wrong like everybody else does.
I already like her.
Ever since I first saw the first VWAT on HGTV's Living with Ed program, I've been wanting to buy one. So I started saving my money as soon as I went on the internet, and I found out how much they cost from the company that made them. They're made in Torrance, California. Not only buying American, buying California, Southern California.
LA County.
The garage that Ms. Davis mentioned at the planning meeting, that's the Big Dog garage owned by Jay Leno. He powers that with a combination of solar arrays on the roof and two different wind turbines, one from Canada and one from the company I'm dealing with. He puts out at least $30,000 worth of electricity back onto the grid. That's with a 1,700 square foot garage, over half of which is maintenance and refurbishing equipment for his antique cars. I contacted Mr. Ludicke's office, and I found out how much that conditional use permit cost. So I thought, well, I don't know what R7000 zoning is, so I started saving $8,000 on top of what it cost to buy the turbine. So now I got enough to buy 3. $125,000 or $120? Go for it, because I'm going to be the first one in my neighborhood, if not the entire city, that buys one. I've got the money. I've got the salesman's phone number. You give me the go-ahead, and there's one up behind my house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, round numbers, how much are the turbines?
The one that I'm looking at is the second least powerful, and it's in the neighborhood of $12,000.
Do you remember how many potential kilowatts or
1.2.
1.2? Okay.
So let's do whatever we can to help her get that up and running, and let's make an event out of it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Her email, yes.
For the record, the fee is $125, just to make sure.
Well, I think she has something to say about that.
I'll skip meat one day next week.
I'll come up with the 5.
Okay. Motion? I'll close the public hearing? Oh, we already voted. Why is she up here now?
Because you lost her card.
Well, we could vote to make it 120. I'm really excited about this. I really want to make certain you get together with Mr. Ludicky and the city do whatever we can to help you get that up and running. This is good stuff, and I really think Lancaster should be the first. And you seem to have already done all the investigation on it. Okay? Okay. New business? None? Council agenda? None? City manager?
No, sir.
City clerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time to address the City Council on any items that are not on the agenda, on any matters not on the agenda. Please fill out a speaker card. You'll find them at the back of the council chambers on the table. And we ask that you fill them out completely and print as clearly as possible in case city staff or the council needs to get in touch with you. We appreciate that you have requests to talk longer than 3 minutes, but please understand your time begins when you do start to speak. If you choose to ask a question during this time, any response by council will not extend your 3 minutes. When you approach the podium, you will see that there are 3 lights. The green light comes on when your time begins. The yellow light comes on when you have 30 seconds left, and the red light comes on when your time is up. We ask that you be considerate of the allotted time to allow other speakers to have their 3 minutes as well. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the meeting. Our microphones are very sensitive and able to pick up your voices. Therefore, we respectfully request that you do not try to adjust them. There is a button on the front of the podium that you can push to lower the entire podium up or down to suit your voice. State law prohibits the City Council from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to the City Manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Brown?
Good evening, City Council.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. My issues were referred to the City Manager, and still, you know what they are. The chloramine is in the water. It's cost me $1,200 for a cat that got sick. I want to know what's going to be done about it. I don't want to drink ammonia. I don't want to breathe ammonia. The other situation that I reported to you, in past city, I'm sure you remember, of the situation with the officer that came to my house. I've discovered that, in fact, there's another situation I found out of another girl that was taken into custody, handcuffed to the front of the sheriff's car. They were taken to an alleyway, I guess over by H or somewhere around there, and she was raped by the 2 officers. She will not come forward. She's terrified, won't give me the names of the officers, and, I don't know. I've tried to email the city. I've tried to handle this in a discreet manner because I have a 13-year-old daughter. I'm extremely worried about this situation now. My car was taken by Justin Lewis, the code enforcer. He's got the last word. I don't care what you guys say that I have an issue with the doctor. The code enforcer is the last word on any issue of property and what's there and what's to be towed, right? Is that not correct?
Actually, we don't know the answer to that because once the Sheriff's Department becomes involved...
Well, the Sheriff's Department was involved.
I know.
As a matter of fact, I called the Sheriff's Department the day
Let's deal with I want to deal with the one situation.
Well, that's already been handled.
I want you to talk to the captain. I want whoever needs to get involved, and I'm assuming in internal affairs, to meet with her and find out who this person is and see if there's any credibility to it. What I don't want to do is have somebody come to the lectern, make an allegation like that we don't investigate.
We will certainly investigate it.
All right, and I'd like it investigated tomorrow.
We will certainly investigate it. We'll do it tomorrow. We take any claim like that very seriously and would immediately turn it over.
Sergeant Bluff was the officer I talked to on August 7th, and then on August 8th my car was taken by Justin Lewis of the code enforcement. So that's the officer I talked to the day before.
Car issue is a separate issue.
Right. But it's like I feel victimized by the city. I mean, as you can understand, my car was taken from my property. Then this other situation, and now the chloramine, and I don't want to live here anymore. I mean, I grew up here, and I feel like, if one thing, our desert oasis had water, but I don't want to breathe ammonia.
There's some mornings I read the newspaper and I don't want to live here.
Yeah, well, think about it. Even if you ask the dumbest woman on the street, would you have pneumonia and your hair dye? She would say no, it's a drying factor. I wash the dishes, and I'll tell you something. I wash them by hand. My hands get really dry. Chloramine is bad. Any way you cut it. My cat got sick. He's got upper respiratory problems now. $1,200 down the line.
Did we ever look into that? Do they have the chloramines in the water now?
LA Waterworks told me they did.
Well, I need to know from the city.
Yes, Robert Neal has spoken to the county. They have a plan to come out here. They're going to conduct public hearings. One of them will be in this council chamber to basically let the people know what's happening and give them their say on it. What we don't know is if they're going to have a vote or not, which is what...
What I'm asking you is, are the chloramines in the water now?
That I don't know. I believe that the process is not there yet.
I called LA Waterworks before the Walmart, the big, huge Walmart city council meeting.
Yeah, I remember that incident.
Yes. Anyways, I asked LA Waterworks, had they put the chloramine, what I said was, I calling from Lancaster, I wanted to know when you put the chloramine in the water.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neal, would you find that out for me and let me know, absolutely certain whether or not the chloramines are in the water now?
I will go back and check that for certain. I'll get you
great.
a positive answer. Yes,
sir. Edward, I can't read it.
I was going to talk about something. I don't know if you guys can do this or what, but I live over in the apartment complex over in Lancaster, like I was saying before. And I know it's hard for people to get around there, too, and me, too, because we don't drive. And I was wondering if they can plan and open a supermarket downtown Lancaster somewhere. That's what I was asking, if they can try to do, so it'll be easy to get around, get food and all that stuff, because I don't drive myself. So I was just asking if there's any way they can do that.
As soon as somebody wants to build one, we will help them do it.
Yeah, it's true.
But
it'd
unfortunately,
be nice to have one, because they have a grocery store down the road here, but you're kind of closed down, too. So it'd be nice if we had one like downtown Lancaster, too.
I would agree, but Mr. Cilio brought in those Walmarts, and
yeah. Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Are you going for the cheap shots?
It was his idea, wasn't it? Dan Selmser?
Thought it's good. You voted for it.
What?
You must have thought it was good. You voted for it.
Are they getting better, or am I getting slower? What?
Mayor, Council. On Wednesday, August 26, approximately 7:30 a.m., I became a member of a growing fraternity of law-abiding citizens of the state of California and throughout the United States. Another victim of illegal immigration, or as the radio and TV commercials that I hear locally say, I've been a victim of a life-altering experience through no fault of my own. What transpired after, I will call the trifecta. A vehicle hit my daughter and I with a gentleman here from Tijuana with an expired license and no insurance. I wound up going to the hospital in an ambulance. My daughter called my wife because she had to get to a calculus class over at Eastside. She was seen later on. When the gentleman hit me, he knocked the front bumper off of his car. We were still shaken up inside the vehicle. The bumper fell off his car. He ran and grabbed it, threw it into his car, and tried to take and leave the scene. What I did was ran over to the car and grabbed the keys out of it, and the gentleman tried to drag me across the parking lot with his car. When the sheriff's department did arrive and the fire department, the first things that I was asked was for my registration, license, and insurance, and was told that if it was not current, that my vehicle could be impounded. My wife returned after the accident because I had already gone to the hospital, and she was there with the sheriff's officers, and what happened at that point was that the sheriff's department wrote the gentleman a ticket and allowed him to drive away after I asked them to arrest him, because I wanted to find out whether the gentleman had the means to pay for the accident that he just created. They told me they couldn't arrest him. They told me they couldn't even impound his car because he's a Mexican national and they can't tow his car, which I don't know whether to be true or not, but I do have that question. I do intend to file a victim of a crime suit. I'm not a litigious person, but I'm very upset about this. The state of California somewhere needs to step up and start doing something about this. The reason I'm here is because you're the city council. City government is the backbone of what government is. It's from here to the top. It's not from the top down. So what I hope is that at some point I get to talk to some of you, and that I will be able to, at that point, go ahead and maybe we can do something that we can have some type of ordinance put into town here that if these people show up and they don't have any insurance, we have an immigration facility out here, they immediately get their vehicle impounded and they're put into that facility until their families can make restitution. This is happening all over. It's a $53 million or billion a year boondoggle that this country will not do anything about.
Thank you. Where are we on the audits of the businesses for whether or not everybody's documented?
We've completed the audit. We have a recommendation for you, which we plan on bringing back the first meeting in October. We're still finalizing the recommendation.
So did we find businesses that weren't compliant?
Yes.
And did we take action?
Yeah, we took action, but there was an issue with, is it compliance because of the people that they're hiring, or is it their record-keeping practices? So we're coming back with a recommendation that will take that out of the equation.
And then we do it again? We do the audit again, you mean?
No, we would recommend changing our business license procedures and then audit after that to that, but then there would be something certain that they would have.
It'd be like using something like E-Verify.
Yeah, exactly. If you prescribe the manner in which you have to verify your employees are legal, then you can audit for one specific thing, which has a documentation. You go online for E-Verify, you either produce the report or you don't.
Okay, so you're going to make recommendations then as to what we should do if they're not compliant?
Yeah. We should pull their license if they're not. You have a cure period.
Careful, they're going to be calling me names again.
We're still finalizing the implementation of it, but it would be along the lines of, if you don't have it, you have to cure the situation within some period of time, say 30 days.
So when can we have all of this in place?
Well, we could bring it to you as an ordinance the first meeting in October, and then it goes in place 30 days later, I think. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you understand what we're talking about? Is what we're going to do is if anybody hires illegal immigrants, then they lose their business licenses, and we think that's probably going to have far more of an impact than any type of law enforcement, because ultimately it's, if the jobs are here, people will come from all over the country and from all over the world. If they're not, then they won't. So hopefully, and I think we're probably going to be one of the first doing that, isn't that right?
I think we're going to be one of the very first cities. There's a couple of states that have done something similar, to my knowledge, and there's a couple cities back east. But I think in California, I don't know of anyone else that's doing it.
All right, this is exciting stuff. Thank you.
I'm going to make one comment on that. The staff has been working on this for, we implemented this and got it started a while back ago. But what's taken so long is this investigation on how do they verify the employment, and we found a lot of really shaky stuff that they've been doing. Somebody might be here illegally, they have a baby here illegally, they take that Social Security number from the baby and the name, and then they go get a job. And so that way, if we implement what's called E-Verify and we do it like that, then that sort of takes there's been a little paperwork glitch with how they do on their how they can actually do it. But the one thing that everybody should know is that if it comes up again, Sacramento has twice now, and they're going to try to do it again, is to make cities it illegal for us to make our businesses use E-Verify. They tried it twice, and they're going to, and I heard they're going to be trying to do it again. So, and take that power away from us.
I'd just be happy if they could balance their budget.
Careful, so far, we're doing okay, but
They did take 20 million from us, so.
yeah, they did.
Mayor Paris?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to say I'm sorry that happened, but you're right, it happens all the time. And I specifically told Captain Dealey when he was captain here a couple of years ago, if that had happened to me, I would have been on top of the patrol car jumping up and down. They would have taken me to jail. But, this is just, this happens all the time, and I really hate to say it, but Americans are really neglected and overlooked at the expense of illegals over and over and over again in many situations. And, it is time that it stops. And I personally would like Lancaster to be known as an unfriendly city. I want to see...
No. You mean to illegal.
Unfriendly to illegals. Because I want them to know that American citizens are going to be preferred here over non-citizens. And one of the things that we had mentioned a while back is I was actually on Channel 3 and did a little bit on the business licenses that are within the city, whether it's your cleaning lady, whether it's your lawn care, that those people who are not licensed to do business in the city of Lancaster are taking out of the pockets of those who are doing business and jumping through hoops and getting the business licenses. And I asked citizens in Lancaster to write down those names and the phone numbers that are on the side of the trucks, ask for a business card, turn it into the city, and let them find out if they are a legitimate business. But the more I'm going to use the word, make it unfriendly for them, the less we'll have them around. And again, I apologize that happened to you.
Anything else? Okay. Mr. Cilio, you have a council report?
Enclosed with your agenda is a report actually from our environmental engineer, Mr. Peter Zorba, who's our primary representative to the Edwards Air Force Base Restoration Advisory Board. It was fairly routine items, and just submitted it for your perusal.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith and Councilmember Marcus.
Yes, we have the AQMD report that's attached, and we also have the AVTA. Nothing too significant on either of those that we haven't reported, but on the High Desert Corridor JPA, now that's where Brad Mitzelfeld, supervisor from San Bernardino County, Mike Antonovich, myself, Mayor Ledford, some people from Apple Valley, from Victorville, and a number of other people sit on that board. It doesn't meet too often, but there's some interesting things that are coming up. There is a private company that is making, I forgot, Mr. Neal, what's the name of the transit train that's going to be going, do you remember? Nicole knows. I can't remember it. Express something. They're going to be building a train from Victorville to Las Vegas. That will make it in about 50 minutes and take you right to the door of your hotel through the transit and everything. They're going to get it done in such an exceptional amount of time. They're not going to worry about easements because they're going over or under, and it's because government hasn't been involved as much, and so they're going to get it done real quick. What they're talking about, what the JPA has been talking to them about, is to see if they could run a spur from Victorville to Palmdale and along the High Desert Corridor, because we're looking at the CEQA stuff that we have to go through and partnering with them. One of the vice presidents or something came and talked. So we might be forming a partnership with them and sort of joining forces as we go forward with our CEQA procedure for that High Desert Corridor. So that's pretty exciting. and we'll get an update on how that's going in the future.
It's called Desert Express?
Is that what it's called? Desert Express? Right. And that might, Nicole might have put something of that in the report, the partnership. We voted on it, and we're going to partner with them and see if we can pool sources on getting, because they have to do this, they have to do the environmental impact reports over the same land. So that's good. That's good news.
Okay. Item number 3 and 4, is that all?
That's all. That's all. Yeah, I gave them all.
We also met with the people doing the bullet train, is that what they call it?
California High-Speed Rail Authority.
The California High-Speed Rail. And just so the council is aware of what I'm doing, I've directed staff to do whatever is necessary to persuade them to have that station in Lancaster instead of Palmdale. And, I want that, and if any of you have any objections to that, I want to hear about them. But I'm assuming that it's the consensus of this council that we should make a major push to put the rail station in Lancaster, and for a host of reasons that we will be explaining throughout this process. We believe Lancaster is the far better location, and it would be a much wiser decision on the part of the rail people to do that. Any objections?
I brought that up to them also.
Everybody in agreement that that's pretty much how we're going to go? Good. Thank you.
Sure idea we put it near the existing airport we have?
Well, it's every bit as functional as their existing airport. Actually, probably more private planes go out of ours than theirs. Okay, thank you. Okay, no closed session. Any other comments? Then we're going to adjourn the meeting in memory of the two Los Angeles firefighters who were killed while fighting the wildfires south of Palmdale. Firefighter specialist Arnie, help me with his last. I've known Arnie since he was a child, but I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Keonis? Okay. Arnie, I don't know if you guys know this, but he went to Bethel Grammar School, Bethel High School. His wife, Lori Furman, they were boyfriend and girlfriend when they were like 13. This is the most tragic thing for Arnie to have died. It is like one of those American love stories you read about, and for this to have happened to him is just tragic. Anyway, we're adjourning in memory of firefighter specialist Arnie Quinones, joined the Los Angeles County Fire Department in 1998 as a volunteer firefighter and graduated from the Fire Academy in 2001. He is survived by his mother, his wife, and his unborn child. Ted Hall joined the Los Angeles County Fire Department in 1981 as a student worker and graduated from the Fire Academy in 1983. He is survived by his wife, 2 sons, and his parents. This is a terrible loss for their families, friends, and community, and we will never forget the bravery and sacrifices of these brave men as well as the firefighters everywhere. We're doing the Heroes Memorial at the park when it's built, and I hope that we take special attention in regards to these 2 firefighters. This is an incredible loss to this community. We're now adjourned until Tuesday, September 22nd, 2009 at 5 p.m. Carol, my day is done and I'm coming home.